that mean we're good, Luke?
We are HEP Live. We are good to go.
All right, thank you. Welcome to those who are just joining us. We have just returned from a closed session, and I will ask the city attorney to report out on our closed session.
There's no reportable action from closed session.
Thank you. So I will now call to order our regular session of the City Council meeting, and I will ask the Mayor Pro Tem Bourbeau to lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand and join me in saluting our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands,
one
nation under God, indivisible,
with
liberty
and justice
for all. Thank you. All right. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Fonzie?
Here.
Councilmember Funk?
Here.
Councilmember Newsom?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Bourbeau?
Here.
Mayor Moreno?
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Well, if you are watching or listening to the City Council meeting tonight, welcome. If you would like to speak at all during the time set aside for community forum or during public comment on any one of the items on the agenda, let me give you the phone number for that. It's 805-538-2888, and you'll be able to provide public comment via phone. When you call, please provide us the item that you would like to speak on, the item number, or let us know that it's community forum. Once again, the number you can call tonight to provide public comment is 805-538-2888. Let's see. Now looking for an approval of the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Wonderful. So we have a motion by Councilmember Newsom and a second by Councilmember Funk, and we will waive the reading in full of all ordinances appearing on this agenda, and the titles of the ordinances will be read aloud by the city clerk at the first reading after the motion and before the city council votes. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Newsom?
Yes.
Councilmember Funk?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Fonzie?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Bourbeau?
Yes.
And Mayor Moreno?
Yes, ma'am.
5-0, motion passes.
Great. We don't have any presentations this evening. We'll move on to the consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and non-controversial by city staff and can be approved in one motion if no member of the council or the public wishes to comment or ask questions. Is there any member of the council that's wishing to pull a consent item?
No.
Seeing none, I will ask Luke, is there anyone on the line who would like to pull a consent item?
There is no one on the line.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Fonzie, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Bourbeau. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Fonzie?
Yes.
Councilmember Funk?
Yes.
Councilmember Newsom?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Bourbeau?
Yes.
Mayor Moreno?
Yes, ma'am.
5-0, motion passes.
Thank you. And now we are on to updates from our city manager, Ms. Rickard.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. The first item I want to talk to you about tonight is our new full-size billboard. So our new full-size billboard is now up along Highway 101 near the north end of town, which reemphasizes our ongoing be safe, be calm, be kind message to the public. I think it's actually at the south end of town, so I apologize on that. Our new banners that also emphasize this message will be placed in front of the lake park and the sunken gardens. So this is the billboard. We changed out the 5 small panels for 1 large billboard that we get as part of allowing them to have billboards in town. Roads project update. A lot of road work going on. As you guys have all known, if you've been trying to get around about town, you can see it everywhere. So the San Anselmo Road project has been completed. I drive by there a lot and have to admit it's absolutely wonderful driving over that smooth surface. So great job to our public works crew. The 2020 pavement resurfacing project just needs to have restriping finished, and that will be done on Friday. This project includes repairs and pavement resurfacing on large sections of Portola Road, Kerberville Avenue, Monterey Road, and Garcia Road. More coming. So the bid opening for our 2020 F14 roads project will be held tomorrow. The project will rehabilitate over 4 miles of residential roads in the southwest quadrant of the city, and will also include minor drainage improvements and the replacement of about a dozen ADA corner ramps. So that's an exciting project there. The Caltrans work continues on Highway 41 with the undergrounding of storm drain culverts and new sidewalk and concrete pathway improvements. The project is to be completed by November, and there will continue to be lane closures and some minor traffic delays along Moore Road, but all of the businesses remain open and should be accessible from Morrow Road. Have some great news. So the class of 2020 graduating high school seniors is coming up. We will be doing a very special graduation this year, seeing as they cannot do their typical graduation ceremony in the football stadium. So the high school, the Atascadero School District is planning a very special graduation event this year so that high school seniors of the class of 2020 will be appropriately and publicly recognized for their achievements during this unusual time. The school district is planning a graduation automobile parade of seniors to be held on Wednesday, June 3rd, beginning at 10 a.m. They will be traveling down Traffic Way from San Benito School, and then we'll be moving down Olmeda West Mall and past City Hall here in the front of City Hall. Families will be riding with the graduates so they can all celebrate together. There will be no viewing of the parade from the sunken gardens or areas directly adjacent to City Hall. They're just going to be, we're expecting a lot of people. We want everybody to spread out and observe their social distancing and be safe. What we will have, which is exciting, for those that can't or won't be able to attend, and they're highly encouraging people to watch it on video. It will be live stream. They will be having different methods of listening and viewing the parade and hearing your senior's name called. In addition, we'll be having a poster wall along the sunken gardens across kind of parallel to Palma right there. This will allow people to tie their best wishes and their posters congratulating their seniors and giving general messages of goodwill to those seniors along the whole wall. It'll go all the way across the sunken gardens. So everybody is invited to do that. We will be taking down any posters or comments that are not in keeping with the graduation and the well wishes and the best wishes that we are talking about. So the city and the school district are working together to plan the logistics and prepare for the appropriate safety procedures. We want to make this as special as possible for our graduates. You're going to have time. The wall should be going up on May 29th. In addition, the school district will be allowing posters to be tied to their fences along West Mall and Olmeda, so the graduates can see as you drive by. The last item I have for you tonight is a request from Councilmember Fonzie at our last meeting. Sorry about that. allergy season's tough. And we're going to have a report from our fire chief, Casey Bryson, talking about our new fire safe software and what we're working on for evacuations, and it's pretty exciting stuff. So, Casey.
Hello, good evening. Thank you, Michelle. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm happy to give you a little update tonight on our software that we're going to be using, implementing a new evacuation program with a notification system. So if you remember, this was one of our council goals from 2019 to 21 to safety readiness and risk mitigation. So both of those, implementing evacuation and the notification of one, are definitely under that goal. So we found a company called Zonehaven we've been working with, and this is still in draft form, but I'd like to kick it off. I'm going to try to be fairly brief tonight, but I would like to show you just a 1.5-minute long video from Zonehaven and their partners with CAL FIRE in the Bay Area. So Luke, if you're available to show that video, that would be great.
We can't hear you, Casey.
No.
Okay, how's that?
Yes.
There you go.
Okay, so just real briefly, there's a couple websites. One is on the community side and one is on the command side, the fire side. So we're building this data that goes into the command side of it. We'll be able to share this with incoming resources, police, fire, other agencies. We can build scenarios. Here's show my screen. Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, so here's an example of our zones that are in draft form. And if I go ahead and click on one, it's going to give us some information. This is the information that we are populating right now. So it's got the population, it's got the number of structures, and then this data right here, I'm going to open up. These would be the sheets that we would share with incoming resources. and we would be able to have them help locate these traffic control points with our PD. And then we're using arrival points. Instead of designating an actual route, we're going to tell people where we want them to go. So we're going to use arrival points, and these will all be designated on this map. So that's a little bit of the command side. I can show you. It also has this zone right here has traffic count. So we know how many cars will be going through intersections, and they become cumulative as we add multiple zones, both on traffic counts and population. So this is it's a very all-encompassing program, and I'll show you what the community side. So this is San Mateo County. They're just ahead of us by only a few weeks, but they have the community website up, and this company, Zone Haven, hopes to have an app in the near future, so you wouldn't have to use a website. But this is on the website. So if we click on one of their zones, and it gives details on if an evacuation's been called for. And right now you can see in this zone, as all the counties in California, we have a shelter in place or shelter at home. And then it gives other resources for the community. So again, this will be the community app. All the other info and resources would be on the command side for police and fire. But we're really excited about it. We've been putting a lot of work into it, gathering that data to fill those zones. And we'll be excited to be rolling this out here in the near future. That concludes my report.
Very cool. It's amazing to see this with all the technology that's available today and to that amount of detail, and something that we definitely need to put together the kind of plan that we're talking about. So awesome. Without getting diving too deep into this, because this isn't an actual item, just if there's any quick clarification questions. I think Councilmember Fonzie, it looked like you might have had one.
Yes, thank you, Casey, for the presentation. This is quite impressive. I was wondering if we have a power outage or if the lines go down and you're not able to get the computer signal, will you still be able to function?
Yeah, that's a great question. We'll still be able to use this program, but the great thing about it too are those hard copies. Those are actual PDFs and hard copies that we could hand out and give to incoming resources. So we'll still have a easily updatable hard copy book to use. Yeah, and then the other side of it is the notification. This is actually going to tie into wireless emergency alert system with the county OES system. So we will be able to notify through cell towers, through the cell system, in the event power goes down.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
And I will ask Rochelle if we have anything else of the city manager's report.
That is it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
That is it. All right. Any questions from council? All right, seeing none, we will move on to Community Forum. Community Forum is the portion of our meeting that's reserved for persons who want to address the council on any matter that isn't on our agenda tonight and over which the council has jurisdiction. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, and please state your name for the record. When making your presentation, comments made during Community Forum cannot be a subject of discussion tonight. We'll allow a maximum of 30 minutes total for Community Forum. And also, please note that we do have a discussion item item D on our agenda that is regarding COVID. So please reserve any comments related to COVID, including economic recovery, the state's order, COVID resources for homeless, or anything else for that item. Thank you very much. And just a reminder to anybody wishing to call in, that number is 805-538-2222. I'm sorry, so many 538, 538-2888, 805-538-2888, anyone listening. And with that, I will ask Luke, are there any callers that are wishing to speak for Community Forum?
Yes, we have one caller, Chris Rodebush.
Hi,
Welcome,
good
Chris.
evening. Greetings from the We Are the Care initiative. Now more than ever, we are reminded that access to quality and affordable childcare is vital to our community to function and support our economy. We can clearly see that childcare professionals are now and always have been an essential part of our workforce. The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted and forever changed the life of every member in our community. Parents are no longer working under normal circumstances, if at all, and children are no longer attending school or childcare centers in the traditional manner. We do not know for certain when our lives will return to normal, but we hold on to the knowledge that someday we will go back to work and children will go back to school. But according to a recent study by the National Association for the Education of Young Children and the Center for American Progress, almost half of all licensed child care centers and family child care homes are at risk of closing due to COVID-19. This will throw an already in crisis child care system into utter chaos. In order for our economy to get back on its feet, we need child care providers. If we do not support the private sector of childcare, many families will be unable to work when the time comes. This is where we ask you, our community leaders, to act now to support childcare and early childhood professionals. Private centers and family childcare homes who already operate on razor-thin margins are at a loss for how they can afford to expend their already limited resources to implement required and necessary changes to ensure the health and safety of children, families, and staff. Additionally, current limitations on group sizes equate to significant reductions in number of children served and therefore the solvency of programs. We need your help to think creatively on ways to ensure that our local mixed delivery childcare system survives this crisis. The same centers that are currently open and serving the families of essential workers, putting their staff at risk to support the community, are the very same programs that may have to close their doors. We are also asking you to go one step further in supporting early childhood and childcare, and appoint a member of this council or staff as a child care liaison. Your child care liaison will be our first point of contact, and we hope to build a relationship with that individual so that together we may make great changes for the families and the workforce of the Atascadero community. We thank you for your support in our first year as an initiative and hope you can continue to support us as we work together to solve the child care crisis. If you want to learn more about the We Are the Care initiative or to get involved, please contact First 5 San Luis Obispo County or find more information on our website, www.first5slo.org. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers wishing to speak at Community Forum, Luke?
Yes, we have Jeff Oslin.
Good evening,
Welcome,
Mayor,
Mr. Oslin.
council members. Just wanted to call in and once again thank our city council and our city officials for doing a tremendous job over the last couple months with supporting our local businesses, checking in with local businesses, and doing everything they can to make sure we exist. I appreciated a phone call from our mayor on Thursday, and I had another one from our city manager a couple of days ago. And the support that you guys are doing for the restaurant industry and letting them put tables out outside of their arena definitely will help the city weather this storm better than most cities. That's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
We have no more speakers for this item.
Okay. Are there any comments that were received by email to be read into the record?
There were no comments received by email on this item.
Thank you. The community forum portion of the meeting is now closed, and I appreciate those that did comment. And any member of the public who has questions or needs any information can always contact the city clerk's office at 805-470-3400 or cityclerk@atascadero.org. We are now moving on to our public hearings. Number one, amendments to the fee schedule. And let's start with any ex parte communication. And just for the public to know, ex parte is whether or not we've had any conversations outside of this public process that could potentially impact the decision that we're making tonight. So I'll just kind of go with my computer screen here. I'll start with Councilmember Fonzie.
No ex parte.
Councilmember Newsom.
No ex parte.
And Mayor Pro Tem Bourbeau.
No ex parte.
And Councilmember Funk.
No ex parte.
Thank you, and none myself. So with that, I will hand this over to our Administrative Services Director, Jerry Rangel, for this presentation.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. The item before you tonight is the amendment of the fee schedule for kind of our annual update for that. Okay, so the service fees are charges that represent the cost recovery of providing certain city services. These might include things like building and planning permits, recreation, or public safety services. These are calculated based on the cost to provide the services, or what we refer to as cost reasonably borne. An extensive fee study was last done in 2014. The study was determined how much it costs the city to provide these services. And then each year we update that with the CPI increase or adjustment. We did have a new study planned for this fiscal year. Actually, it was all ready to begin in March, but then was delayed due to the COVID response. So this month, instead of bringing you a new study, we will just be doing the service fee update with the CPI. Some of the services that we have are 100% tax supported, and then some of them are subsidized, so youth sports, those types of things, because as a society, we've decided that some of those are particularly important to our community, and so we do provide some subsidy on some of those. Yet other services like building permits are 100% paid by the applicant. Those are fully user-supported fees. After the completion of the study in 2014, Council adopted the fee schedule and then requested that the CPI adjustments be brought back annually for consideration. The most recent study was done, or update was done last May. The updated service fees that the Council is looking at tonight have been reflecting, updated to reflect the adjustment of CPI of 2.8%. Most of the fees in the draft schedule attached reflect only the CPI increase, but some fees, however, are fixed by state law, so those did not change. If adopted tonight, the amended fee schedule would go into effect in 60 days. And that concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director. Do we have any questions? Well, actually, even before questions, just to let the public know for anyone that's watching, we'll go fairly soon to public comment. And the comment line is 805-538-2888. And when it comes to the fee schedule that we're talking about, these are fees where we're simply recovering costs. We're not, the city can't, quote unquote, make money off of these fees. We're recovering costs, or as the director said, in some cases, not fully recovering because they are costs like, recreation for youth and things like that, that we really want to support as a community. So with that, are there any council questions on this item? Councilmember Funk.
Yeah, just one. On page 34 of the packet, there's an item, annual utility tree permit, that is a little under $1,400 as a fee. Is that a fee that an individual homeowner would ever have to pay, or is that something that's paid by utility companies? So that, is it the household or PG&E that's paying $1,400?
I believe that is for utility companies. I would need to do a little bit more research on that, but that's my understanding of that particular fee.
Okay. Then that's fine, thanks.
Any other questions? Seeing no questions, we will go ahead and open it up to public comment. Are there any callers wishing to speak on this item?
We have no callers for this item.
Are there any comments that were received by email to be read into the record?
There were no comments received by email.
Okay, thank you. I will go ahead and close the public comment period and bring it back to council for either a discussion or a motion.
I move that we adopt staff's recommendations.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Newsom, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Bourbeau. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Newsom,
Yes.
Councilmember Fonzie,
Yes.
Councilmember Funk,
Yes?
Mayor Pro Tem Bourbeau,
Yes.
Mayor Moreno.
Yes, ma'am.
5-0, motion passes.
Thank you. We're on to our management reports, and the first one is the COVID-19 fiscal update. Please note that this is different than the item D, which is a COVID discussion item, which is broader. This is specifically a fiscal update for COVID-19. And again, our financial or our administrative services director, Jerry Rangel.
Thank you once again. Let me get the screen to show. Okay, I think we're ready. Okay, so this is just a fiscal update with everything that's been going on the last few months. You know, we've been working really crazy behind the scenes, but we wanted to bring something to you, to council, to the community, so that we're kind of, everybody knows where we are, that what we've seen, what we've kind of analyzed so far, and kind of have opened that discussion up. We've worked really hard as a city throughout the years to maintain fiscal stability, and I think we've done a really good job at that. COVID kind of blew that all out of the water. It's impacted our revenues, and it's really impacted all of our lives. We've really tried to analyze to see what the best plan is, see how it's affecting us, see what's happening so that we know how to move forward. This discussion is based on projections which are a point in time. So obviously we don't know what's going to happen today, tomorrow, the next day. We're learning data, we're learning information. Minute by minute, seems like sometimes things change. So we're taking all of that into consideration to move forward. So my main point here is I want to continue to analyze, continue to let you know that we're analyzing behind the scenes, we're revising projections, and we will keep you updated on all of this going forward. So kind of just a little starting point on where we are as a city kind of coming into this. So this is the breakdown of our city's general fund revenue. So the 2019-21 budget estimates for the 2 years put property tax revenue at about 47% of total general fund revenue. This is excluding Measure F14 funds. This means two things. One, that property tax is relatively stable. It's a good revenue source. It isn't subject to rapid variations. But two, just under half of the general fund is also slow to increase, and most of that influence comes from the economy. Clearly, we've done a great job as a council on doing economic development focus, but that really takes a long time to realize. It's a long-term process. Property taxes that are due in 1920-21 were calculated back in January, a few months ago, so pre-COVID. So at this point, large reductions in property tax revenues are not expected. If there is a significant recession that could affect base values, it's a slower process. It would have to be pretty deep and long. But then that wouldn't show up until fiscal year 21-22. So at this point, the county assessor is still projecting a 5% increase in countywide secured roll for fiscal 21-22. Sales tax revenue. So our sales tax revenue is about 18% of general fund revenues. Sales tax is arguably the most volatile of all the major revenues and is highly reactive to local, state, and national economies. This is a graph of where we thought we were going with sales tax prior to the COVID. So this is from our adopted 1921 budget document, and it illustrates kind of the gradual increases we are expecting in sales tax. We barely just finally recovered from the Great Recession in fiscal year 17-18, and we're seeing gradual increases. But of course, that's all changed now. So the city contracts with HDL companies to provide information and analysis. And they have provided us some analysis and projections going forward, given the COVID situation. Some of their key assumptions are that the stay-at-home order ends by the end of May. The virus will largely have run its course by the end of September, and there's no later resurgence of the virus, and that the sales tax will generally continue to decline through the end of this calendar year before beginning moderate gains in January.
Director?
Of course.
Director, could
Yes.
I interrupt you one quick moment? You said this. What you said was stay-at-home order ends the assumption before May, and the virus run its course September. But here we're looking at June and October. Could you clarify?
Yes. Yes. Stay-at-home will end before the end of May, ends at the end of May before the beginning of June, I think is what my intention was on this slide. And the virus will have run its course by the end of September. So
got it, before. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Okay.
On that one.
No worries.
And clearly, we don't know if any of this information is right. Some people are saying, yes, there's a huge potential for resurgence. There wasn't really enough data available at the time that they made this projection to really have a strong assumptions on it. So that is the reason that they didn't include any resurgence in this. But again, it is a point in time. We need to continue to evaluate it. Of Atascadero sales tax revenue, about 18% of it is due from sales of fuel and service stations. This sector has seen significant volatility in the last few years and decreases in the per gallon prices and in consumption. And we're seeing both of that with the COVID-19. HDL is projecting a sales decrease of about 27% in that sector of fuel and service station industry and about 21% decrease in autos and transportation. Fortunately, there is a small bit of positive offset there from positive returns in the pool from AB 147, also known as the Wayfair decision, which requires certain online retailers to remit taxes, which is a new thing that we haven't really had before. So that's giving us a little bit of an offset positive boost. So this is the post-COVID sales tax projections. Overall, HDL is projecting a decrease in sales tax revenue for us of about 11% for the current fiscal year 1920 and another 1.6 for next year 2021, excluding Measure F14. As part of the relief offered to sales tax collectors in the state, the governor has offered two options that affect the remittance of sales tax revenue. A 90-day extension to file sales tax returns that were originally due on April 30th, and a 12-month interest interest-free payment plan that's applicable to certain individuals and companies for up to $50,000 in sales tax liability. These programs are available to businesses in our community and should help the businesses in our community, so we're happy about that. The thing is that it will shift some of the revenues. So the first 90-day extension will shift it within the same fiscal year. A couple of months, it's not a big shift. We have enough cash flow to make that all work. That's not the bigger one. The bigger one is the 12-month interest-free program. So we don't know how many businesses will take advantage of this. We can do our estimates, and our estimates based on the makeup of sales taxpayers in Atascadero put this conservatively as much as $766,000. We don't know for sure what that's going to be, but we will continue to monitor that. The deferral of the revenue is evidenced in the graph that you see here on the screen. You can see the big spike in in 2021. We drop off really hard in the current year, 1920, and then next year, 2021, we spike. So that is largely due to that big shift that we're expecting in this interest-free payment program. The California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, the CDTFA, has indicated that they remain positive about this program and suggest that maybe not as many businesses will need to take advantage of it as one might think. And many businesses prepay, and the April collections were reported to be fairly comparative with prior periods. But staff has assumed that all businesses that are eligible will take advantage of the program and assumes no defaults in there. And while this discussion is really focused on the city's general fund, reductions in the sales tax revenues also affect Measure F14 revenue, gas tax revenue, local transportation funds. But at this time, staff believes that existing programs and projects will be able to continue as planned with the funds already in hand. But depending on the length and the depth of these reductions, there could be a delay in future programs or projects for that. Now shifting to transient occupancy tax. So again, this is the pre-COVID projection of revenues that came from our budget. And transient occupancy taxes are revenues collected from guests staying at lodging facilities within the city. This is a local revenue with the city has significantly more influence on. Prior to COVID-19 issue, the city had seen sizable increases in the revenues with council's emphasis on promotion and economic growth and efforts by the Atascadero Tourism Business Improvement District. This increase in additional lodging facilities that are in development currently also provides additional potential for TOT revenues. This is the projection at this point for post-COVID revenues. TOT revenues were average in January and February of this year, but then March really showed the impacts. These impacts are expected to be the most significant in the current quarter, April through June, and then start recovery from there. The TOT revenue projections assume a reduction of 30% in that first quarter, January through March, and 72% in the current quarter of April through June. Reductions for quarters next fiscal year are expected to taper off as guests again start traveling. Staff is currently projecting revenue reductions for the next fiscal year, 55% in quarter one, 30% in quarter two, 15% in quarter three, and 10% in quarter four. Overall, staff assumed a 26% reduction in TOT revenue this fiscal year and 29% reduction next fiscal year. And we were expecting a new hotel to open in April of this year. We have pushed that back to October. The city is also experiencing a reduction in service fee revenues related to activities such as recreation, zoo admissions, park rentals, facility rentals, the Colony Park Community Center, Pavilion on the Lake. The staff assumed revenue reductions of this group of 24% in the first fiscal year and 10% in the next fiscal year. So those were all broken down, analyzed, but that's kind of the overall total for this grouping before returning to normal in 21-22. Employee services. Expenses are an important part of the equation too, and expenses were reviewed and analyzed to understand if there's any potential of savings to offset the revenue reductions. The city is really a service organization, and employee services are the backbone of our community. The largest portion of the general fund expenditure is dedicated to employee services. About 72% of the general fund expenditures in the budget were allocated for employee services. But even at that, staffing has always been very lean at Atascadero and has not kept pace with the increase in population and service level demands due to constrained resources. Employees continue to be hard at work providing services for the community throughout these stay-at-home orders, and the related costs have not been reduced. In this time of uncertainty, public safety is more important than ever. About 56% of the city's general fund expenditures is devoted to police and fire services. And this includes costs for each officer, firefighter, equipment, supplies, training. And these costs have not been reduced during this time. In fact, some have increased for personal protective equipment and additional cleaning supplies. Other departments aren't really seeing reductions either. Although the zoo is closed to the public, the cost of feeding and caring for the animals continues, as does the maintenance of the building, facilities, and landscapes. Some costs directly relate to services such as purchase of basketballs or something like that for youth sports, and that could be reduced, but there is a base level cost that's ongoing regardless of how many teams you have or weddings you hold or those sorts of things. CalPERS is another big issue. So CalPERS retirement costs are an area that we've been monitoring very carefully, especially with the downturn in the economy and the investment markets. The city's contribution to CalPERS is offset by gains in the CalPERS investments. If the gains are reduced or turn negative, there's significant concern that the contribution costs could be increased, and that would have a very negative effect on our budget. CalPERS is reporting that the market value of the fund at the end of their last fiscal year was $372.6 billion. That was on June 30th, 2019. As of the end of last week, it was $377.9 billion. So CalPERS will end their fiscal year on June 30th, so we will continue to monitor that investment progress, particularly as the fiscal year approaches. Any adjustments that would need to be made as a result of lower investment returns would become effective for us in 3 years and would be amortized over a 20-year period. The city's overall financial strategy has consistently been to maintain a conservative outlook by putting aside in the good times and then using those reserves in down times such as this. By employing this strategy, the city can avoid the ups and downs and keep our services consistent. The Council's financial strategy has been effective at building a general fund reserve. As of June 30th, 2019, the general fund, excluding Measure F14 funds, had a fund balance of $10.9 million or 51.2% of general fund expenditures. The current budget cycle included the use of just over $1 million in reserves. The 7-year projection showed that we'd start building back reserves again in year 24-25. The COVID-induced Great Shutdown, as some are calling it, have changed the revenue forecast picture, and the new projection shows just under $1.3 million in reserves used during this 2-year budget cycle, and that the new turnaround date would be 25-26. And while this isn't an ideal situation, the reserves are doing exactly what we wanted them to do. They're allowing us to maintain consistent services in the face of this downturn. And since this economic shutdown is so different from anything that we've experienced in history, there's a lot of unknowns as to how deep and how long it will be. The situation requires continuous monitoring and analysis, but at the same time, allows us some time to kind of see how things will play out, and so we can see what needs to be modified. Cities are often able to look at their neighbors for resources, ideas, thoughts, actions on how to best serve the community or resolve issues that come up. This is especially true in our small community. While the cities in the county have a lot of similarities, there are also a lot of differences. Some cities have a significant portion of their revenue coming from some of the more volatile revenue sources like TOT, sales tax, gross receipts, business license taxes. The city of Atascadero, however, because we have the 47% of our general fund coming from property tax, would likely have a different response than another city with higher volatility. This graph illustrates this difference and shows the different makeups of revenue sources and also revenue per capita in the 7 cities in the county. Atascadero has a relatively smaller portion of general fund revenue subject to volatility and is therefore afforded a little bit more time to gather data, understand the impacts before we make significant changes. But the downside of this, of course, you can see that we receive only $745 in revenue per capita, which is much less than all of the other cities. Before the COVID-19 shutdown occurred, Atascadero already had a tight budget, and so we'll have to continue to monitor and adjust as necessary as part of our larger ongoing strategy. The response to COVID-19 outbreak has reduced city revenue. This we know. What we don't know is how long it will last and how severe the impacts might be. At this point in time, staff are projecting a 2-year revenue reduction that would be about equal to 9% loss for fiscal year 1920. Using the city's financial strategy, the reserves are bridging the gap short term while we continue to analyze and learn more about the larger economic picture. Staff is recommending no significant changes now, and as we continue to look for opportunities for long-term solutions. And that concludes my report, and I'd be happy to address any questions.
Thank you, Director. Very thorough and measured report. Appreciate that very much. Are there any questions from the council? And just so the public knows, we'll be going to public comment soon. So the number is 805-538-2888 if you're wanting to call in and be on the line for when we do take public comment. And just so you know, too, we're not taking any action tonight. This is a receive and file report, so it's giving us all an opportunity together to look at our finances and what the impact is from COVID-19. So yes, any questions? Councilmember Funk.
Yes, thank you for that very thorough report. You mentioned that one of the assumptions that underlies the consultant's current advice to us about what we might expect in sales tax revenue, is based on the assumption that that there will not be a second wave of the virus in the fall, and it will be pretty much burnt out in terms of its effects on the economy by the end of September. What is it fair in terms of what's our contingency if that doesn't happen? Because we are all fervently hoping that that happens, that we can move on from this. But if it doesn't, then is it fair to characterize our strategy as just to continue to hunker down and watch very carefully what the projections are? Could you elaborate on that?
Yes, I would agree. I think there's just not enough data at this point to understand how to build that into the projections. to make that something that would be really relied upon. So at this point, we're kind of taking every moment. We are in close communication with HDL. We're looking at a lot of data, trying to understand that. We are keeping an eye on our long-term projections, on our reserves as a percentage of general fund expenditures, to make sure that all of the numbers that flow through that, make sure that we can sustain ourselves until we start turning around. Our goal is to keep that reserve level at a bearable amount. What the council has previously said is about 20%. So we're keeping an eye on that. We try not to get it to drop below that. And if we see that somewhere in the future that we're going to drop too low, then that's when we need to come back together, have that discussion, and make some of those hard decisions. But at this point, the cash flow is working for us. The reserves are working for us. That is allowing us to have this opportunity to kind of see how this goes. This is newer, so we've looked at, the Great Recession and some other things, but this is so new and different that there aren't really those markers that will tell us exactly how long things will progress.
Thanks for that. We have a bit of a strategic advantage, ironically, if you will, because we're such a leanly funded city. We're so minimally funded and so leanly staffed in all our departments that we already know how to deal with stretching ourselves very thin. It reminds me of something from the Hunger Games, where the folks from the economically disadvantaged areas had an advantage because they already knew how to be hungry. Okay, so we know how to be hungry and to make that work. And we also, and these of course are the times for which you cities have reserves, and we're using them. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other council questions? Seeing no questions, I will open this up to public comment. Are there any callers wishing to speak on this item?
We have no callers for this item.
Thank you. Are there any comments that were received by email to be read into the record?
There were no comments on this item that were received by email.
Thank you. So we will go ahead and close the public comment period. And again, Jerry, thank you so very much. Really, when you provide us information, you're very thorough with it, very complete. And what we see here is the same conservative approach that we always take, saying, here's what we think the numbers are going to be. As Councilmember Funk alluded to, I mean, we're scrappy. We've been scrappy, and we're going to have to continue to be that way. And we know how to do it, thank goodness. So I think you've done a really good job of putting this together, and our entire team has really pulled together like usual to do what needs to get done and do it with as efficiently as possible. So thank you, and thank you to all of staff. I think we have a question, Mayor Pro Tem Borbo.
Well, it wasn't a question, so I wanted to save it till after public comment.
Sure.
In regards the sales tax, the slide, and that reflected how we were just getting back to our pre-Great Recession levels of sales tax revenue. And that's just another indication of how poorly we do relative to other cities when it comes to sales tax revenue. Other cities, I know, it took them only about 5 years, at least in San Luis, when I was there as the finance guy, they were approaching their pre-recession levels within 5 years and have certainly much exceeded their 2008 levels by now. We suffer by not having, a good retail sales tax base, and it, hinders our ability to provide services. And I think that chart shows it, because if you compare it to other cities, it just simply didn't take that long to get back to their pre-2008 norm. And I think back, 30, 35 years ago, and I'm sure Councilmember Fonz, you remember this, we in some ways had more retail in our community then. We had Riley's department store, and at the same time we had Beano's, and we had Coronet, and several other things, and we had new car dealerships with Ford and Jeep, it just reflects how important it is to have a good sales tax base, and which all leads to the comment Councilmember Funk made, which was we're a low revenue city, and so ironically in this depressed time we will suffer less relatively than other cities that have a good retail sales tax base. They're going to lose a lot more than us, but that doesn't mean we're in a good position. It just means we were used to being a low revenue community to begin with. Thank you.
We're just used to the pain. Is that our city attorney?
No, it's city treasurer. Can you hear me? This is Jerry.
Yes, we can, Jerry. Hi.
Thanks. Could I just briefly comment on the last two items? The fee schedule.
Well, the fee schedule, we've actually closed that already. So,
but
do you want to throw a little something in?
Yeah, I would just want to say that the council and the staff is wise to have this practice of updating the fee schedule a little bit every year. It's a lot less painful for the citizens to have a tiny increases every year rather than waiting and then having a big pop that's hurts. So I'm glad that they've had continued to do that. And then one thing on the you're also wise to have your staff, especially Jerry's and her folks, put together this presentation. They need you need to be aware that things are not going to be the same. It's not going to pop back to what it was in any way, in my view. But you do have certain advantages, as was stated. But one of the things that Ms. Rangel mentioned was this court decision about internet purchases. That is a bright spot because a lot of people buy stuff online in Atascadero, and a lot of people are buying more online now than they have in the past. Amazon and those other big retailers Walmart are making more money than they ever knew than they ever have in the past. The difficulty, I think, and Jerry, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the way they allocate those internet sales is based on your local property tax. It's not exactly, they don't track, okay, I bought something from Indiana and that sales tax was collected and it flows back to Atascadero. I think it goes into a pool. Am I right, Jerry? And it's divvied up then based on local receipts.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. So there needs to be local. We still need brick and mortar. And it's Charles, you forgot to mention Kmart is sitting vacant over there. And, I used to buy a lot of stuff at Kmart. Anyway, so that's what I wanted to say. And if I can answer any questions about property tax, I think you're okay with that. The delinquency could be a concern if it goes way up, but the county has continued to stay on the teeter plan, which is the methodology where the county basically makes up for all the delinquencies and then collects penalties later. So as long as the county continues having the cities on the teeter plan, you'll be protected if there's delinquencies. And even in the Great Recession of 2008 and 9, the delinquencies didn't go up so much that became a problem. It was more that the Prop 8 values, the assessor was dropping values based on the fact that the retail market was in the tank. And I don't think we've seen that quite yet, but that is a possibility. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for letting me jump in there.
Thank you, Mr. Seebach. And I did see a hand from Councilmember Fonzie.
Thank you. Good report, Jerry. I think you covered it very well. I think there's a couple of things that Charles mentioned that we need to focus in on. Our sales tax revenue is down. Our revenues are down about 9% less than we were hoping for this time last year. However, I do believe that we're going to see extra revenue from some of the hotels and the TOT, that we have new hotels coming in that weren't present back in the times that we had Beano's and so forth. So let's kind of hang our hat and hope we can help the businesses that are struggling right now to succeed and stay in business, and encourage the tourism to come back, and keep our fingers crossed that we'll make it through.
Mayor Pro Tem, did you have?
I did. I just want to clarify something that Treasurer Seebach mentioned. The bright spot of what's called the Wayfair decision, where we do get some additional sales tax that's put into the county pool. Those are for out of when our residents buy something out of state. Typically, when you buy something from Amazon, it's coming from a fulfillment center in California, and those sales tax dollars go to the community with those large warehouses. And so we are very much not benefiting. And in fact, like most cities in California are suffering, when our residents buy something from Amazon, that revenue goes to another community and we don't see any of it. And that's true of the vast majority of cities in California, where you just have a few winners who have Amazon warehouses, and the rest are losers.
Any other discussion points before we move to our next item? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on. Again, thank you very much, Jerry, for that. We'll move on to our item C2, which is the consideration of a sales tax measure. And this is going to be our city manager, Rochelle Rickard. I will ask, we have this and then one other item. I'll just ask, we're fairly quick in. Does anybody need to take a break before this? How are we doing? Okay, I think we're looking good.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. The next item that you have before you tonight is consideration of a sales tax measure. This is not an item where you will be placing anything on the ballot. This is not an item where you will be imposing a sales tax, but this is furthering our discussion about potentially placing an item on the November 2020 ballot for consideration by the voters. So some background. The city is, as we just discussed, what I call a poorly funded city, and we have some structural financial challenges. That has been the case since incorporation. As Mayor Pro Tem Bourbeau said, our sales tax base has dwindled. Our TOT base has increased. We have a lot of challenges as a primarily bedroom community. Since incorporation, we have looked to various solutions. We have tried to encourage retail to locate here in Atascadero. We have worked on economic development in a lot of different forms to try and get that job base, that retail base, that sales base here in Atascadero. We've encouraged tourism in trying to get that going, and have had success with some of these, but not success to the point that we can overcome some of our fiscal challenges. We've also been, as you all said, we're scrappy, we're lean, we do a lot with less, but we still face some challenges, and as we'll discuss, there's some things that we have ahead of us. So I've been with the city oh gosh, 23 years now. Since I arrived and prior to that, fiscal sustainability and fiscal challenges have been a topic of discussion for all of the councils. This council is no different. In January of 2019, the council adopted fiscal sustainability as one of its top 3 priority areas. And in May of 2019, the council adopted an action plan that included action to investigate placing a sales tax on the November 2020 ballot. In November of 2019, the city hired True North Research to conduct a statistically valid poll of likely voters. This was not a poll, SurveyMonkey or something like that. This was a very selected poll where individuals were invited to respond based on the makeup of our voting population. In January 2020, the poll was conducted, and in February 2020, top-line results were reviewed at the mid-cycle update council meeting. So we went through all of those poll results at a high level in February, and then back again in March, we presented a lot more of the detailed polling results to the council. That report is attached to this staff report so that everybody can see it. That report show that 65% of the selected people polled stated that they would vote yes on, or would likely to vote, definitely yes or probably yes, on a 1-cent sales tax measure. Obviously, a lot has changed since January of 2020, but a lot of things have remained the same. Little background on sales tax. I know we were just talking about it, but just some general reminders. The state tax rate is 7.25% of gross taxable sales. The state gets 6.25% of that, and the city where the sales takes place gets 1% of that. There are a lot of complex formulas to determine where sales takes place on anything that's internet or delivered, installations, all of those things. But in general, if you go to Home Depot here in Atascadero and buy a $100 sock, the city will get $1 to pay for their police, fire, parks, recreation services. If you go to, say, Lowe's in Paso Robles will say thank you very much, and they will get 1% of, they'll get that $1 to support Paso Robles police, fire, parks, and that type of thing. If you have things delivered to your house, as Mayor Pro Tem Bourbeau said, most likely they go to that 1%, that $1 goes to a town somewhere in the valley that has a big giant fulfillment center. And there are a lot of other different nuances to that. Voters may add and approve additional sales tax. Many of the jurisdictions throughout the state do have an additional sales tax. We in Atascadero have Measure F14 that we are currently using for our roads program that we talked about earlier. It's a ½ cent. If you look at the CDTFA website, that's the California Department of, oh boy, I can't remember, basically taxes and franchises. The rates vary throughout the state from 7.25%. There's at least one city that has a 10.5%. A lot of the more urban areas are in the 10% range. There's a few that are down at the 7.25. We're at 7.75 right now. Some of the things sales tax is it's not imposed on a lot of the basic necessities for life. So it is not imposed on groceries. It is not imposed on medications, utilities, services. real estate, rent, mortgages. You will never pay or you won't pay in California a sales tax on any of those things. What you will pay for the sales tax, if the measure passes in November, it'll be imposed on purchases made in the city of Atascadero here. Things like gas, things like when you go to the grocery store, all those taxable items, cleaning products, paper products, anything that is not a grocery, medication, utility. Some snack foods are taxable, but by and large, all other groceries are not. You will pay it on building materials. You will pay it on restaurants. In addition, the additional sales tax is a little bit different than your regular 1% Bradley Burns on what it will be charged on. When you buy a vehicle, you do not pay the sales tax rate in the place that you bought it. So if I go up to San Jose and they have a 9.25% sales tax, I won't pay that. I'll pay the city of Atascadero sales tax. The city would get the additional sales tax, so it would get the 1% if this passed, plus if F14 still was there, we would get that. And the city of San Jose would get the Bradley Burns, the underlying one out of the 7.25%. So cars registered in Atascadero do get that. And Amazon sales, there is an Amazon rule where the city gets their additional tax on Amazon purchases made in the city of Atascadero. They are one of our larger contributors to our F14 right now. When we're talking about sales tax measures, as I said in the beginning, the City Council will never be asked to decide whether you want to impose an additional sales tax on residents or purchases here in Atascadero. All the City Council can decide is whether or not to place a sales tax measure on the November ballot so that voters could decide whether sales here in Atascadero should be taxed at an additional percentage. It must be placed on a ballot where council members are selected. So for us, it's always November of the even years. There is an exception if it's in a fiscal emergency, but that brings a lot of other strings with it. So for the most part, November of even years. And if passed in November of 2020, it goes into effect April 1st, 2021. So you would start paying it on purchases here in Atascadero in April of 2021, and the city would get its first payment around June of 2021. So that's kind of the timeline. A general tax requires 50% of the voters plus one voter to vote for it in order to pass, and a special tax requires 2/3 plus one voter to pass for that. And I did forget to mention that for council to decide to place it on the ballot, it needs to have a 4/5 vote. So we would need at least 4 of you to vote for it. Okay, what are we considering? This is the proposed language that we are working with right now. What do we want to do with the sales tax? We want to provide funding for fire protection, paramedics, and 911 emergency response, police, crime prevention and investigation, maintenance of parks, public facilities and infrastructure, graffiti removal, and recreation, community services, and other general city services in the city of Atascadero. Shall the measure establishing a 1% sales tax be adopted, providing approximately $4.5 million annually for the city services until ended by the voters, and with annual independent audits and all money locally controlled. Couple of things on that. The $4.5 million is lower than what we pulled for the in January. At that time, we were estimating for fiscal year 21, by April of 2021, we'd be running about $5 million. With COVID and everything you just heard from our administrative services director, that is now being reduced down to $4.5 million. Okay, now the important things. Why would we consider placing a sales tax measure on the ballot? I know the 5 of you are very familiar with this. We talk about this a lot through budgeting, and went through and did a lot of public outreach, talk on the blocks, trying to get people to understand what is the city's financial situation, what are we spending money on, what monies do we get. This is a graph that you guys have all seen. It has been updated for fiscal year 18-19. The city of Atascadero is the column at the far left. We have the lowest revenue per capita in the entire county. There for a while, Grover Beach and Atascadero were sort of neck and neck, but they have increased their revenue pool, and that's good. You know, we receive about $745 per capita per person to provide those police, fire, paramedic, parks, streets, all of those things. A city like Pismo Beach receives about $3,000 per capita to do it. You know, Morro Bay, Paso Robles, San Luis Obispo, they're all about double what we receive. Arroyo Grande is slightly higher, about another 30%, and Grover Beach runs about $200 per capita more. People say, how can that be that the city only gets $745 per person to provide all that? I pay a lot more than that in my property tax. I pay $3,500 a year in my property tax. What do you do with all of that money? When people pay property tax here in the city of Atascadero, and each city this makeup is very different. It all depends on what the percentage were on the date that is stated in Proposition 13. But the city receives about $500 of that $3,500 annual bill. The vast majority of that money goes to schools, Atascadero Unified School District, county schools, Cuesta College, all of those. The county and various districts for the county receive about $579 of that. This particular bill assumes that we have a sewer bill on it. Some bills don't have sewer, and that percentage, that'll change this a little bit. But overall, the city gets a small slice of that property tax bill. We talked a lot about sales tax on the last item. We are a very low sales tax city. We don't have a strong sales tax base. We are considerably less than all of our neighbors. So what does that mean? Basically, the inequity of revenue forces the city to manage resources in a fiscally responsible manner. We're consistently protecting and stretching our taxpayer dollars as far as possible, which is a good thing, and it's a good practice, and we're going to continue to do that no matter what. But while the city does as much as it can for as many as it can, as often as it can, there's still much to be done and no funding available to do it. This is a chart that was shared on Talk on the Block presentation with data from cleargov.com. It shows when compared to other cities across the state of California, the city spends a fraction of the state average in all categories. The state average is the mean. There's a lot of data on cleargov.com. I looked at it today, and they've shifted some of the categories since we did this last, but lots of great data. I implore everybody to go take a look at it. They take data from all of our state controllers' reports, so they're a little bit different slice of things, but all in all, good data. And basically, what it consistently shows is that when compared to other cities across the state, the city spends a fraction of the state average in all categories: police, fire, administration, parks and recreation, all of those. that's good. It means we're cost effective. What it doesn't show is how we do that, and why we're considering placing a sales tax measure on the ballot. Why don't we just keep going with these fractions of a percentage? There are really 4 areas where I would say that the city is, I'll call it artificially keeping costs down, and that it's becoming not sustainable. And the 4 areas are: we're doing the same amount of work with fewer employees. We're paying those employees a lot less than neighboring jurisdictions. We're deferring repairs and replacement of infrastructure, and we have lower service levels than a lot of our neighboring cities. So fewer employees. This is a chart with just our adjacent cities, so Morro Bay, San Luis Obispo, and Paso Robles, and the number of employees per 1,000 residents. Now, not all cities are the same. These cities have water. The city doesn't have a water department. Our city has a zoo. Those cities don't have a zoo. So there are differences between them. But in general, it's a good measure to look. If you look, all of our neighboring cities have considerably more employees per resident. What that means is they have more people to get those things done, to maintain their parks, to respond to calls for services, to answer 911, to do all of those things, to process building permits or planning permits. We are scrappy. We get it done with a lot less. We tend to have, similar amounts of parks and similar amounts of calls per service for medical and fire, but we get it done with a lot less people. But what's been happening is basically this slow erosion of services. I'm going to use police as an example a lot tonight because it's probably the one that a lot of the community can relate to. Back in 93, 94, we had about 1.1 police officers to 1.2 police officers per 1,000. We now hover somewhere between 0.9 and 0.95. The national average for a city of our size is 1.7 police officers per 1,000. So we are doing it at just a little over half of the national average, and that's the average, not the high or the ideal. It is what nationwide we can spend. What that means is that often we have 3 police officers on duty. That's the minimum that we will run. We'll fill and backfill over time and do other things to get more than 3. And the reason is you need 2 officers on duty to respond to a lot of different calls. Domestic violence, robberies, a lot of those types of things require 2 officers in town. If we arrest somebody at the beginning of a shift, we're going to use one of those officers a lot of the time to drive that person down to San Luis Obispo. If they have any medical issues, including mental health or addiction issues, they first have to be cleared by a hospital before they can go to jail. So we're going to go down and sit with them at the hospital, and then we're going to bring them out to the jail. And at best, we'll be gone an hour and a half. At worst, we can be gone, up to 8 hours, where we're down to 2 officers. It is doable. We're doing a fantastic job with what we have, but there's been a lot of changes in the state that are making this more and more unsustainable. Prop 57, Prop 47, no bail, all of those things have reduced overcrowding in the prisons, but they've done it by letting out people that have previously been in prison, and some of them are here in town committing crimes, sometimes repeatedly. we are seeing just that general trend. So that is a huge challenge. This is not this. I'm using police as an example, but extend this to any department, whether it's parks, whether it's streets, whether it's community development. I know not that long ago we used to show, hey, we process more permits than any other city, per employee, and it looked a lot like the graphs that you just saw for police. So this is everywhere in the city, and they all have challenges with new regulations, new requirements, new creative ways to get things done. The next area is we are consistently amongst the lowest, if not the lowest, paying jurisdiction in the county. Again, that means we're lean and scrappy, but it presents a lot of challenges. These are top staff police officer and top sergeant comparisons throughout the county. We have lots of positions here in the city where it is very hard to get qualified applicants to apply. We're not a high-paying city, and we have a high cost of living. As you look at this monthly salary for an officer, somebody can go work for the city of San Luis Obispo, and their salary is going to be $2,000 more a month than the city of Atascadero. What that means is that we often lose officers to some of our neighboring jurisdictions. That's hard for somebody who, no matter how much they love working here, if you have a family and can make $24,000 more a year and still live here in Atascadero, that is hard to say no to, no matter how much you like working here. Now there are other things. There's some benefit differences and some of that, but our total comp continues to be low. Let me tell you what happens when we have a vacancy in the police department. The police department, police officers in general throughout the state of California, quality, professional, seasoned police officers, there is a shortage of people applying and people out there that are qualified to do that. So all jurisdictions in the state are typically fighting with each other and against each other to attract those qualified police professionals. We have had some luck in attracting some out-of-state candidates, but a lot of times we are going to what we call our police recruit program. With that program, what we do is we hire potential police officers. Some people we try and hire, local, but it's open to everybody. We say, hey, if you want to be a police officer, come apply to be a police recruit. We will put them through a lot of testing, backgrounds, medical, and if we decided to hire them on, we will hire them on as a police recruit. We then pay them to attend the police academy. That is their full-time job for a little over 6 months. And they have to pass the police academy. So we not only pay them salary and benefits, but we also pay for the academy costs and books and other things. At the end of the academy, if they pass, we've had several that have not made it through the academy. At that time, they then go and start training with an Atascadero field training officer. That will go happen for about another 4 months. At the end of that, they will then be able to be on the streets of Atascadero as a full-fledged police officer. And so there is a long process where we have somebody that we are paying, it's filling one of our positions, but they can't be a productive member of the police force or be out there on their own For usually it takes about a year in the best case scenario, depending on the academy. Sometimes it may take a year and a half. And then if we have to start all over because of somebody not making it through the academy, it may take even 2 years to fill a police vacancy. So those police vacancies in particular are very, very difficult. At the end of the academy and at the end of the training, we have a very professional police officer that has a lot of potential, but is unseasoned out there, and we definitely appreciate having them. We have had a lot of luck with these police officers staying with us. There have been some exceptions where we have lost somebody pretty much very shortly after they got off of their training. So we did not have the benefit of having them long. They moved on to a higher paying local agency. Again, this is not uncommon. It's probably most pronounced in the police department, but there are other positions that we have recruited for 2-3 times with no qualified applicants applying, and then eventually either finding a way to contract that out or hiring somebody that has the potential and trying to train them. When you're trying to do things lean and efficiently and all of that, it's difficult if you have that revolving door and those vacancies and those changes. And so this is greatly affecting our ability to provide services to the community. Deterioration of infrastructure. Cities provide a lot of and have a lot of infrastructure. We have parks, buildings, roads, vehicles, equipment, computer, a whole host of items that wear out and have to be replaced, have to be repaired, all of those things. We have not been putting away money and or replacing those things or repairing them as we should. We've been finding ways to do purchases through grants, donations. If you think about it, at the Colony Park, we used to have a small playground there. It wore out, was no longer compliant. We didn't have the money to replace it. We took it off, just took it out. Parents for Joy came to us, a few years after that and said, we really want a playground here. We will raise money to do that. And we were able to get a playground. So again, we're scrappy. We find ways to do it. But there are some things that we haven't found ways to do it. We have fire station number 1. It's 70 years old. It has the seismic, I guess, structure that you would expect from a 1950s building. It is certainly not built to any essential services standards or any of that. It's just the regular seismic structure of a 1950s commercial building, 70-year-old commercial building. It's got some exhaust safety issues, and generally it just is falling apart. There's plumbing issues, leaky roof, all of those things. There aren't a lot of grants out there to replace a fire station. There aren't a lot of people that want to donate. $9.3 million plus, that was a 2017 construction cost estimate. At some point, that fire station is not going to be usable anymore, and we're going to have to figure out how to renovate it and make it into something that our fire department can respond from safely each time. We have a number of fire engines. Each of those engines cost about $500,000 as part of our cost-saving measures. In the Great Recession, we stopped putting away money for replacement of any kind of vehicle or equipment that had a life of more than 20 years. So that includes your fire engines, your fire trucks. The truck is the big ladder truck. It includes, tractors, backhoes, all of those things that we use to remove trees in the storm, help with flooding, all of that. Dump trucks, fire and paramedic equipment. We've had luck with donations. Bertha Schultz, very, very generous woman, helped us out with both our fire engines and our cardiac monitors. Without those types of donations, we're in a world of hurt. Park facilities, I think all of us has been out to the lake park and see our crumbling benches and other things that our staff and Kiwanis and Rotary do a great job trying to put together. But at some point, there just isn't enough left to keep repairing. And then obviously roads. Roads is our largest asset. We are putting money into it from F14. This was the original graph that we had back in 2014 that said, hey, if we pass F14, we will drop a little bit in our PCI, pavement condition index, but not nearly as much as if we don't pass F14. Amazingly, again, that scrappy nature has taken place. We have actually been able to move our pavement condition index up slightly. So it went from like a 48, I want to say, to 51. So that's good news, but it's a long way from good roads. Everybody in town, as much road work has been going on, I still get, when are you going to get to my road? With 140 miles, it's a challenge. The last area is level of service. Thing I hear a lot, things I know the council hears a lot is, well, Paso has this, I want that. We need to do that too. Lake water quality, it's a huge priority of a lot of people in the community. You have to buy algicide and put that in. And we have to say no to a lot of these things because we don't have the funding to be able just to install new pickleball courts. We don't have the funding to pay more staff so that those small general plan amendments where, hey, it's going to provide some more housing, but it's just one or two parcels, and we just can't make that a priority because we don't have enough bodies for that. Hey, we want to replace the playground equipment. Okay, great, you got to go do a fundraiser. These are all things that a lot of our neighboring cities are able to fund and that our community wants that we're just not getting to. In addition to, obviously, the biggies are more people to help with the homeless, from both sides of that standpoint. So there's a lot of things day to day that we hear about. On the sales tax, I kind of just went through some of the why do we need it. But other than those whys, why do we need more than 3 police officers? Why do we need to be able to keep our police officers? There are some reasons why a sales tax and maybe not some of the other types of taxes that we have. So for sales tax, everyone pays. If somebody's driving through 101 and they get off on Moore Road and go into one of those gas stations, they're going to pay that sales tax, and it's going to benefit our city to do so. Whether they're a traveler, whether they're a tourist, whether they're a business or a resident, everybody pays a portion of that tax. It is paid based on consumption. So those that buy very little in taxable goods pay very little. Those that buy a lot of taxable goods or expensive taxable goods pay more. The sales tax cannot be taken by the state if it's approved by the voters, and it's not paid on basic necessities. Again, not on groceries, not on rent, not on medication or medical supplies. It is paid on other things. This revenue is necessary. We're kind of at a crossroads. If we want to maintain our police services and our fire services and parks, we need to do something sooner rather than later, because this is not sustainable in the long run. The other thing is that 6 of the 7 cities in the county are looking at a sales tax on the November ballot. Whether or not, they're going to be faced with the same decision that you guys are faced with on whether or not to place on the ballot, but all of them have done work on that. A lot of our residents, whether we put it on the ballot or not, may be paying it as they go to San Luis Obispo to buy the pair of shoes or to Paso Robles, or other places will be paying their sales tax to help with that other city's services. We should do it too. Obviously, there's a lot of arguments against too. Certain residents can't afford any new taxes. No matter how little they spend, any little bit does hurt them. COVID-19 has had a financial impact on some in our community, and so, how does that work, and how can they afford this? And then one of the ones we hear a lot is this is a general tax and there's no guarantee on how the additional revenue will be spent. Obviously, that decision on where it would be spent, is up to you with a lot of public input and a lot of transparency and accountability, I would imagine. You hear other arguments, and people will hear other arguments about, government employees are well paid. Some of those things, I can understand how people may see that and feel that, but I will also tell you that we have difficulties hiring people into a lot of those government positions, because, as you saw with police, they're not as well paid as compared to the market. Going back, proposed language. Again, let me just read it one more time. And this language was developed by our polling consultant, True North Research, Dr. Tim. He has suggested to provide funding for fire protection, paramedics, and 911 emergency response, police crime prevention and investigations, maintenance of park, public facilities and infrastructure, graffiti removal, and recreation, community services, and other general city services in the city of Atascadero. Shall the measure establishing a 1% sales tax be adopted, providing approximately $4.5 million annually for city services until ended by the voters, with annual independent audits and all money locally controlled. There are a lot of restrictions on the ballot measure. There's some language that has to be in there. Shall the measure establishing. There is language about you have to say how long it will be there for, how much you expect to raise with this, and other things. So this meets all of those criteria, along with trying to say what this is for. What I am looking for tonight, there's basically going to be 2 decisions or 2 things that I'm looking for. Is one, is does the council want to direct me to go ahead and draft an ordinance and ballot measure and resolutions necessary to put it on the November 2020 election. I would bring that back to you for your consideration at the July 14th meeting. And then the second thing is, if you do want an ordinance brought back to you or a sales tax measure brought back to you, what types of things do you want to see in it? What is the amount of the increase that you want to see? Staff is suggesting 1%. There is certainly a need for that, but council could decide a lower or a higher percent. Should there be a sunset clause or should there not? Again, staff is recommending no sunset clause. The money is needed for ongoing maintenance of services, for police officers, for salary increases, probably for some sort of debt service for a new fire station. If this has a sunset clause, your ability to keep those police officers on, or even to hire those police officers, may be hampered. It's a little bit different. Do you want a citizens advisory committee? This is a committee that meets and recommends to the council on how the money should be spent. Or do you want a citizens oversight committee, where after the council meets and has a lot of public input and other things and decides, the oversight committee reviews what the money was actually spent on versus what the council said it would be spent on, and does a report on that. There are other transparency and accountability measures that could be put onto this, whether it's, how many public meetings do you want to have, or those types of things. And so staff is looking for direction so that when we bring you those resolutions and the ordinance, that it has, some of this information already in that. As you know, with an ordinance, we can't change the language during a council meeting substantially. It would have to come back. And because July 14th is one of the last days that the council can place an item on the ballot and still meet all the deadlines to get it on the November 2020 ballot, having discussion so that we understand what it is you're looking for is important. So the recommendation is direct staff to prepare a resolution and ordinance for City Council consideration at the July 14th, 2020 meeting to place a 1 cent local sales tax override measure. It says on the November 18th ballot, but that is November 2020, sorry. And so because it said that on the original agenda, I just want to point that out. We're talking November 2020, November 18th. 2018 has passed. You can't place anything on that ballot. People can't vote on anything. So it is 2020. And then provide staff direction on what should be included in the draft ordinance. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, City Manager Rickard. If you would go back a couple of slides to the points that we're going to be considering and talking about. Yeah, let's keep it right there. So what I think I'm going to do is we'll go through council questions, and then let's take a quick break, and then we'll go to public comment. Anyone who is listening who would like to call in for public comment, go ahead and do it now. You can be on the phone and be listening in. The number is 805-538-2888. Again, 805-538-2888. But we'll go through council questions. We'll take a brief recess, come back, and go to the public comment. So what I want to bring up here is we've gone through a lot of information tonight, a lot of financial information, and if you've been paying attention to what's been going on in City Council for any length of time, a lot of this information is probably not new to you. And so it certainly isn't new to any of us. And what we're talking about tonight are the options before us. Number one, do we move forward with placing something on the ballot? And if so, what are the components of it? So we're not digging into the financial pieces tonight. We actually have. Our questions won't be going there because we've done that. Certainly, any members of the public who have questions, you're more than welcome to ask them. Please do. But if you're wondering why we're not discussing that, we've discussed it many, many times and have been through it. And I will say, Rochelle, you did a very good job really explaining that, especially if someone is just new and coming in and saying, what is this all about? So with that, let's go ahead and start with any council questions. And how about I just go, if I go across my screen, if you don't mind, left to right. I'll start with Councilmember Fonzie.
Thank you. Good report, Rochelle. A question regarding the impact of COVID. I thought that there was something that was said in a previous meeting about another city that would be polling prior to putting it on the ballot. Can you tell me about that?
Yes, it is my understanding that the city of San Luis Obispo has scheduled a second poll for the last week in June. And so they will be getting those poll results, and we'd have a better idea of what, they'll have a better idea of how COVID affected their voters. I did talk to our research consultant. He did say that he could certainly do a second poll. It would run around $17,000 for the city to do a second poll. We are hopeful that we will get the city of San Luis Obispo results, and while their electorate's composition's not exactly like ours, it would at least give us some idea of how it affected their ballot, but it will be tight. I know that they are considering theirs on the third week in July. We'd be considering ours on the second week in July.
Have you contacted the city of San Luis Obispo to see if they'd be willing to share that information with us?
They are willing to share that information with us. All of the cities are trying to work collaboratively as much as possible. So as soon as it's available to them and available to give to us, they will do so.
Okay. And another question, and this would be regarding the Citizens Oversight Committee. I know that when we passed the road tax for improvement, we did implement it with a Citizen Oversight Committee to give the citizens reassurance that there would be some mechanism to look at what we're spending and how we're spending it. Can you tell me any pros or cons to having a Citizen Oversight Committee?
Yeah, one of the pros is that it definitely does give skeptics some assurance that, hey, I want to be on the oversight committee. I want to look through all this stuff. I don't believe that the city is going to spend it or spent it where they said they would. Some of the cons are it has been hard to get members consistently to be on the oversight committee. To be honest, it's a lot of work, not necessarily in reviewing all of the expenses, but anybody that is on a public body like that is subject to a lot of the same trainings and disclosure and paperwork that all of you are, whether it's harassment training or ethics training or Form 700s and a lot of that type of stuff. So it tends to be a little bit of a revolving door. The city does spend admin on it, so it does take staff time and effort to do that. So there is a cost to it, but one of the benefits is that hey, when the city puts out the report that this is where they spent the money, independent eyes other than the auditors have also looked at it.
Okay, thank you. I think that's my questions.
And Councilmember Newsom.
I too was going to talk to you about the difference between the Citizen Advisory Committee versus the oversight. You're explaining the oversight. Advisory, can you speak to what a Citizen Advisory Committee would do?
Yeah, so there are some jurisdictions that have a Citizen Advisory Committee where the Citizen Advisory Committee meets and looks at where the money should be spent and advises the council on this is how all of that money should be spent. So they are basically, for the most part, determining where the money goes and how it's spent.
Do either committees cost about the same amount of time and staff time, or is the advisory committee more costly on staff time?
I would say that a Citizen Advisory Committee is going to take it's going to take more staff time. You guys, the city council participates in a lot of city council meetings with the city manager, attends, different functions and knows what's going on in the city. You have a good baseline understanding of city operations, city functions, all of those types of things. If we have a Citizen Advisory Committee, we are going to have to, in order for them to make good decisions and understand what's going on, we're going to have to educate them to the level that we have educated you. And I don't think it can be an instead of, it's in addition to, all of that work and discussions as we meet weekly and we talk about, what's going on in the police department and some of that. For an advisory committee to make the decisions that we need to make on maintaining services, somehow we're going to have to give them and get them to understand a lot of those nuances that the city council already understands. So the advisory committee will be a lot more work. The oversight committee, is going to take some education, but a lot of it is, hey, council has already decided where the money should be spent, with obviously a lot of public input and meetings and those types of things. They're just going to say yes. They're meeting both the intent and the letter of where they said they would spend it.
If we chose to not have an advisory committee or an oversight committee, you talk about other transparency or other accountable measures. What do you recommend?
I think no matter what, and I think you would all agree, the more transparent we are, the better it is for everybody. We want to be very clear about where we're spending this money. I would imagine if you didn't have an oversight and you didn't have an advisory committee, I would imagine that you guys will still want to have a number of public outreach meetings, study sessions, city council meetings, a lot of trying to get the public to engage and understand the process. The finance committee, I know Mayor Moreno, when you were on the finance committee, she would implore people, please come in and come learn about the finances. Come talk to us, come have a say in the budget. I can understand why, maybe even those that were enthusiastic at first realized, okay, I can pay for police officers and firefighters and not much else. But with this, you will have, some ability to go out to the public and try and get that. So you could put in measures that, hey, at least every other year we will hold 2 study sessions that with the public, asking for opinions or input on where the funds are spent. There's any number and different things that you can do.
Okay, thank you for all your hard work. I know this is a lot to put in a staff report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Borbo.
I have no questions at this time.
Councilmember Funk.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the very thorough report, Rochelle. A question in the ballot language, there's a mention of the annual independent audit. Is this an additional layer of cost and bureaucracy, or is this the annual audit that is currently done to assess how the city spends its money?
This is the regular annual audit that the city does to assess and report on how they spend the money. So all of our expenditures and our systems are tested and reported on and looked at by the auditors. Anything that we receive in additional sales tax would go through the same level of scrutiny as all of our other expenditures.
So it wouldn't materially affect the cost of the audit to have an additional level of expense?
No, it should not.
Okay. You mentioned the advice and oversight committee options. And one of the real concerns here is if we're going to ask people to pay more money in taxes, people don't want to pay for a lot of layers of bureaucracy. So would it be possible for people to participate in those finance committee meetings? I served on that finance committee this past cycle with Mayor Pro Tem Barbeau, and it was very thorough. The budget is a 2-inch thick doorstop, and we went through every line of it thoroughly, quickly but thoroughly. So can the public participate in that way instead to be able to give input?
Absolutely. We can easily incorporate, the public should be participating in those. We just have difficulties getting there. But absolutely, they could participate in that. We could even, fairly easily hold either more meetings or different times to try and encourage even more public participation if the Finance Committee would like to.
Okay. And an advisory committee or an oversight committee, those would not be elected positions. So the people that the voters hold accountable are the 5 of us and serve on the council members and the mayor, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Those are appointed.
Yeah, okay. I have a couple of other questions here, just in terms of part of what I've wrestled with is are there ways financially to get around having to seek this revenue? So a couple of technical questions just to help me with the numbers that I've been running, and that we'll talk about when we go to discussion. If we were able to get the revenue from a big box store, that'd be about $500,000 a year in sales tax revenue, right?
Yes, that's a good estimate.
Okay, on about, say, 20 acres of land?
That, yes. For a big
Okay,
box
so
store, yes.
yeah, okay, so we're looking at 2,500 an acre for a really productive use of commercial land. And how many acres of commercial property do we have in the city that are not developed or that are underdeveloped, underutilized?
So I think if you count those acres that are underutilized or not up to their full potential, they could have something on them, but is not a full commercial, build out. We're looking at around 133 acres. That was a number that we came up with for some of a different study that we're doing. Now, a lot of those acres could never be used for a big box store or something like that. They're small pieces here and there, but yes.
Okay. And then last, if we with our with the Measure F14, we've been able to extend the amount of roads that we do from we were doing about a mile a year. Now we're up to what, about 7 miles a year?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay, so on 144 miles of road, we can currently hit each piece of road on an average about once every 20 years.
Yes.
Okay. Good enough. That ends my technical questions, and we'll come back to why I was asking them when we go to discussion.
Okay, so I think we are, and I have no questions at this time. I think we are ready to go ahead and take a break, and then we'll come back to public comment. So any member of the public wishing to speak, and if you haven't dialed in yet, it's 805-538-2888. I show it's currently 8:11. Why don't we come back at 8:20, and we will go right to public comment. So we'll recess the meeting. Thank you. Luke, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, good. As soon as we have Heather and Charles back with us, we'll get going. All right, so welcome back. We are coming back from a recess, and we are going to public comment for item C2, consideration of a sales tax measure. And so if there are any members of the public not already on the line that would like to call in, the number is 805-538-2888. So public comment is now open. Are there any callers that we have wishing to speak on this item?
Yes, we have a few callers. Our first caller is Ron Overacker.
Hello. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, welcome.
All right. Thank you. My name is Ron Overacker, and I'm the president of the Atascadero Police Association. I'd like to commend the city manager on her staff report. I think she's done a great job capturing the state of the city and the desperate need for this sales tax. It should be noted that in 1980, we were at 1.4 officers per thousand. With 23 officers, we had about half the population, which is nearly double. The bottom line is we just can't go on like this. We're down to less than 1 officer per 1,000 residents, and it's just inadequate to protect the city of this size. Our resources are stretched thinner and thinner every time the state decides to release more and more criminals onto the streets. Part of the state's emergency response to COVID has enacted the zero bail, so that if we arrest suspects, they're not even held and made to post bail for certain crimes. And now with the state's financial crisis, the governor is planning to close at least 2 prisons, pushing more criminals onto our streets. If we don't increase our staffing levels, we can't maintain the level of service our community frankly deserves. We don't want to be a city where our officers only respond to major in progress crimes. I still believe a police officer should respond to our individual citizens and not defer to a public website where they can report their crimes because our officers are just too busy. We can't maintain our level of service at 0.9 officers per 1,000, and this ballot measure is our best hope of changing all of that. There are a variety of issues for you to consider in placing this on the ballot. Clearly, the full 1% is the only way forward. We need the financial stability now more than ever just to maintain our level of service. The staff report mentioned sunsetting as an option. I'll tell you, it's going to be impossible to attract and retain qualified officers if there's a chance their positions could be cut if a tax measure isn't renewed. Another issue to consider is the oversight committee to assure voters their tax monies will be used for the priorities. Of course, we have an elected city council who basically already does that. To have an advisory committee that would have the authority to influence funding, priorities would seem to undermine the role of our council. I again, feel an elected body would be the best source for allocating these funds. I want to commend you all on your bravery in moving forward with this critical issue. Our need for additional police officers on the streets has never been greater. On behalf of the men and women of the Atascadero Police Association, I ask for your unanimous support in bringing this sales tax measure to the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Overacker. Next speaker, please.
Next, we have Victoria Carenza.
Hi,
Hello,
Council.
Ms. Carenza.
My name is Victoria. Hi. I'm glad to have listened into all of the presentations tonight. So I'm a homeowner and a resident of Atascadero, and our family really wants to invest in Atascadero and not just live here. We want to see, which we have been seeing even before the COVID crisis, the small businesses to thrive and see our community's character shine. Not just another mecca of conventional big brand stores that really, frankly, make me disoriented when I jump off the freeway and traveling. So in order to do that, I see that we really have no choice with our unsustainable budget to go ahead and to direct staff to draft a sales tax measure in the tight window of opportunity to get it in the November 2020 ballot. I mean, it's basically the case that you are allowing our community to make the choice and really how best to support ourselves going forward. So I strongly urge you to do that. I also wanted to just mention on the public safety presentation, the numbers just illustrate to me more and more that your employees really have their hands tied in a way to be reactive rather than proactive, especially with over half the overall budget going to public safety and the very low numbers of compensation they get and able to hire. So with us dipping into the reserves, while a godsend with the 10 million that we have, it's also not realistic with the uncertain future. And the HDL projected 10% decrease in the business and industry and almost 15% decrease with restaurants and consumer goods. I just see this as being pretty much a no-brainer for us to move forward on. So the only other thing I wanted to mention too is that I did sit when I was a resident of San Luis Obispo as a renter back in 2014 on a sales tax advisory committee, and I would suggest not. I also see that it might be a duplication of staff's time, and I really liked what was talked about when you guys got to discuss having residents be able to go more to the financial committee meetings and promoting that and spending more of your energy on that. So thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Brandon Roberts.
Hi, good evening. Can
Hello,
everybody hear
Mr.
me?
Roberts? Yes.
Yes, hello. Hi, my name is Brandon Roberts. I'm the president of our Atascadero Professional Firefighters Local 3600. I'd like to first thank the city manager for putting such an outstanding staff report together. I think she did a fantastic job of showing the city's need for this sales tax measure. Although we as a city do run very well on a limited budget currently and are still able to provide a high level of service for our community, we recognize that as our city grows, that demand for services, just like right now, will grow as well. Because I have to go to a call right now, I'll just wrap up with saying that we stand behind this. We really hope that you consider moving the sales tax forward and directing staff to write it up for you guys for that July 14th vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Next speaker.
Our next speaker is Tori Keene.
Hi, my
evening,
name
Ms.
is
Keene.
Tori Keene, and can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. So my name is Tori Keene, and I am a resident and homeowner here in Atascadero. I have two small children, and I have friends in the public sector. I fully and completely support the sales tax, not only for things that we need right now, but in order to invest in our future and our children's future. We need to make sure that we can take care of our citizens now and also give kids who are, go off to college a reason to come back, because that's how our community is going to be able to grow. But right now we need to be able to support our public safety, our parks, and anything else that our city council deems that we need for our city to grow and prosper. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Keene. Next speaker, please.
We have no more speakers for this item.
All right, thank you. Are there any comments that were received by email to be read into the record?
There were comments. So the first one is from Gregor Jones. He states, I am a member of an ad hoc group concerned about the financial future of our city. As we are all aware, Atascadero has the lowest revenue per capita of all cities in this county. As your recent contracted polls indicate, a majority of our citizens would support a 1% sales tax to support our police, fire, and emergency responders, as well as our infrastructure needs. With our current economic calamity, with business shutdowns and drastic slowdowns, we are in great need of an additional revenue source. We believe that our citizens would greatly appreciate a unanimous council decision to place a ballot measure before the voters in November for a new 1% sales tax. Such a unanimous decision took place in 2014 with Measure F14 for a half-cent sales tax, which has been highly successful in having our streets, roads, and related infrastructure repaired and improved. Our business community was greatly supportive of F14, and I believe such a commitment by our business community will be there for a 1% tax measure to be placed on the ballot for November. I greatly urge you to consider such a sales tax measure to be placed on our November ballot, and I would hope that such a decision would be unanimous. I believe it would bring a much needed encouragement to our citizens to know that our city council is looking out for their best interest. Respectfully, Gregor Jones. And Council, Mayor Moreno, I also received a text, so not the most conventional submittal, but from somebody that would like to read something into the record. And so I will do this. This is from Ron DeCarly. He is a citizen of Atascadero. And he states, I urge council to support staff recommendation. Your prior fiscal staff report on COVID-19 clearly identifies the need for supplemental general fund monies. Our city is behind all other jurisdictions in per capita spending. This results in bare minimum funding for most city services, failing infrastructure, and high staff turnover and increased difficulty in maintaining basic services. I was surprised to see our city has the same level of police officers on patrol as we had 20 years ago and only 3 on a beat. What happens when these officers have to deal with a felony arrest? The remaining officers may have no backup. All city services and programs are substantially underfunded compared with other cities. Atascadero appears to be falling further and further behind. Your fiscal report justifies a full 1% without a sunset. Our city needs financial stability. This measure provides the stability and the funding necessary to stabilize staffing, improve services, and maintain and improve facilities and infrastructure. I urge the council to support staff recommendation and let the others decide in November. Ron DeCarly. And I did get a text that Brandon Roberts, who had to leave and was unable to finish his comments, submitted them electronically. Also, I cannot find access to that right now, but I will make sure that the council receives those offline. He was able to speak for a little bit, so I think we're okay.
Okay, thank you. And I did get a message from our treasurer, Jerry Seebach, that Mr. Seebach would like to speak on this item too. So, Jerry, why don't we bring you on?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to offer a little bit of comment on 2 of the decision items. And I also think that Rochelle and the staff did an excellent job with this, and they've brought the council a very good decision package. But one thing is on the sunset clause. I think the police and fire folks have a very good point that if you are intending to use this money for staffing supplementation, having a sunset clause is almost a death knell for it, because who wants to be the last person hired and the first person fired when this thing, when the sunset runs out. So I think they have a very good point about avoiding the sunset clause. Then on the advisory committee or the oversight committee, I have gone through, I think, 3 of the finance committee budget reviews, which is every other year. And those are quite extensive and very expensive in terms of staff time as well. And it's a good process, but it is open to the public. And this last time we went through it, we had several people who did participate. So I think that's the key. That would be the best way, is like push the finance committee a little bit more and maybe publicize a little better. But if you, there is an essential difference between this measure and F14. Now, in the sales tax for the roads, it was supposed to be an earmarked tax for road improvement and maintenance. And so there was an arguable case to be made of a need for oversight, because there was a lot of people worried about what they call supplantation. If they voted a tax on themselves for roads, and the council said, no, we're going to use it for parks or the zoo or something like that, that they didn't, it wasn't promised that way, that was a good reason to have an oversight committee. But this is, as it's written, is a general tax, and there's no supplantation. You are supplementing services, and that's really what the council is elected to do, is to make decisions of allocation of scarce resources. And the budget hearings and the normal outreach that you do is still needed, but to have a separate committee, either of advisory or oversight, probably is just a burden. And I don't see the need for it like there was a need for that with the earmarked tax, which was the F14. So I wanted to make the point that there is a difference between this general tax that can be used for any city service and including roads, but not necessarily only roads. That's my point. So thank you. I could answer any questions as well if you want me to jump in.
Thank you, Treasurer Seebach. Thank you very much. I kind of included you with public comment, but you're not exactly the public, but you're not the council. But please hang around, because if we have questions, certainly would be happy to have you answer those. I will ask one. Thank you. I'll ask one last time if we have anybody in the public, anybody on the phone that's wishing to speak on this item, Luke.
We have no additional callers.
All right. And Ms. Rickard, anything else that's come in?
Nothing else has come in.
All right, thank you. We will go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the council. What's important to know, and it's been said tonight, is that we as the council cannot vote in a tax. What we can do is vote to put this on the ballot. And what that really does is it gives all of you as residents the decision as to what we're going to do going forward. You've seen the financials. Again, if you've been around for any length of time, this isn't news to you. And as we look at declining service levels and what other measures might need to take place, that's a huge decision to make. And for the 5 of us to make that decision for you, I don't think is wise. And so in moving forward with this, it's because I trust you to make the decision and say either yes or no. Yes, we want to invest, maintain our quality of life, increase services, that, or no, we want to cut and do this and we're going to be a bedroom community, and however that's going to be handled. But that's a decision that all of us make together I don't think that's something just the 5 of us should make, because we take that completely out of your hands. So that said, we're here to discuss tonight if we're going to do that and what these options are. So what I'd like to do is maybe just kind of, we've asked our questions, just kind of go down the line and see, you know, how are, kind of like we did last week with cannabis, and we went item by item. So let's go with first amount of increase, then the sunset clause, and just see where we have some commonality and where we might need to have some conversation about an item. So with regards to the amount of the increase being recommended as a 1%, and so I'll go down right, I'll kind of change now and go from right to my left. Amount of increase at 1%, and just let me know yay or nay with the 1%, or do you want to have greater discussion about it? Councilmember Funk.
Yeah, I will frame I'll give you the yay or nay, but frame that with rationale in it. First of all, there's a question, do we need to do this at all? And if so, how much of an increase do we need, and how long will it need to last? And I've really wrestled with this a lot, because the question is, you know, are we in a hole? Yes. I think that we've seen that in the city manager's presentation, that we have accrued deferred maintenance across the board. We have stretched everybody as thin as we can. We have been using reserves, which the council is really aware of. And we've been using up some of our reserves for a number of years now, because we just do not generate enough money to fund the ongoing operations of the city with the current sales tax rate that's there. So then the question is, if we agree that we're in a hole, can we cut our way out of it, or can we grow our way out of it? I've looked at those too. And if we try to cut our way out of it, I don't know, we have, you know, what, 2 police officers on duty instead of 3? This is nuts. We're already at so many levels the thinnest, the lowest paid, and the most stretched staff, and people are the majority of the budget, and we've deferred all the maintenance that we can do, and you know, woohoo, we can now make it up to you know, once every 20 years we could do something about your road, and that's improvement. Okay, so we can't cut our way out of this. So then the question is, can we grow our way out of it? And that's why I asked some questions at the beginning. So you know, if you think if a retail store, a big box store, assuming you know, that we could even get one, you know, if that generates about $500,000 on 20 acres, that's about 25,000 an acre. We have a lot of acreage that's not all that productive in our commercial things. So maybe we could average half of that on 133,000 acres. So, you know, that could get us maybe another 1.6 million in tax revenue. If every piece of commercial property in this city were built out and productive as it could be. And we're going to get another 400,000 in TOT, and maybe if commercial property tax, we've got 10 million and about that we get, and about 40% of that is commercial, and if that went up, we could get maybe another 800,000. So just that my scratch total here is that if everything really wonderful happened, we could grow ourselves another maybe 2.8 million in revenues. This is not going to be enough, and it can't happen quickly enough. So I would go with Gregor Jones and the other commentators who have said we need a full 1% increase. And I would go with Mr. Overacker's comments about the potential and our treasurer's comments about the damage potentially of a sunset clause undoing what we're trying to accomplish. So I vote 1% and no sunset.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Borbo.
Yeah, so just add to that. I mean, I support the 1% option. And the reason is we are just structurally deficient in revenue. And I've been around here 35 years, and I was on the council over 30 years ago. And at that time, we were a city that didn't make much in the way of sales tax revenue. It didn't make much in the way of transient occupancy tax revenue. And in the last 30 years, and the council has always wanted to do better at that. And we have done better transient occupancy tax wise in the last few years. But 30 years on, we are actually farther behind other cities in our county than we were then. You know, we've gained in bed tax, but you think about how much other cities like Pismo and Paso and San Luis Obispo have gained in that regard. We simply are a bedroom community that doesn't generate a lot of revenue. We're not a poor community, but we're a poor city. We just don't generate much revenue. And we need to put this in the hands of the voters to make a strategic decision as to what they want us to do. If they say no, then we're gonna have some very serious discussions about what will cut or dwindle over time. And we need to go for the full 1 cent, I believe, because that's what it would take to maintain our viability over the long haul. Because the council will work hard to attract commercial development and hotels, et cetera. But we're not, frankly, in the right place for that to succeed beyond our wildest dreams. We will do everything we can to do that and make our community one where people can shop locally and where tourists will want to come and stay. But we're just simply not the best situated for that. And we want to maintain a viable city. We've got to give the voters the choice on do they want to support that so we can function as a city, function well as a city, or not. I mean, our city staff does very well with limited resources. And as a result, there is little waste because we don't have the money to waste it. Our staff does extremely well with a thin staff compared to others. And so to answer the basic question, I think we need to go for the, put it out there for the voters to decide on the full 1%.
And because Councilmember Funk did mention it, where are you on the sunset clause?
I kind of agree with what the some of the other earlier speakers had said. I thought sunset was important the first time this was done with F-14, especially when we were saying it was, in that particular case, it was a general tax, and the council could have done other things with it, but it, said it would focus on roads and has very much done so, and staff's done a great job with improving our roads. But in this case, we're talking about using this to help pay for staff, and you don't want to have a sunset clause if you're funding basic operations, including staff. So I would say no on the sunset clause. And we're not doing advisory committee comments yet, correct? Yeah,
not yet.
So
not
that's
yet.
it.
Thank you. Councilmember Newsom.
Due to the financial constraints of our city, I'm for the 1% with no sunset clause as well, because I think once you have started doing budgets and allocating that towards wages, again, you don't want to take it away from personnel.
Thank you. Councilmember Fonzie.
Thank you. I've struggled with this one too. I've been on the council the longest of anybody on the council currently, and came in with the idea that we could grow the pie and make the city prosper through growth. And I've been sadly disappointed through all our efforts, and they have been many, and we have had some success with the TOT and hotels. I've come to the conclusion that we are not sustainable currently, and the future doesn't look like we will be sustainable on our own. That we need the citizens of our city to very carefully consider what their sacrifice will be. And we know that there is a sacrifice involved with taxes. And COVID may have an effect on the sales tax option as well. But at this point in time, I believe we will have declining services if we don't go ahead and put this on the ballot. And many of us live here and want those services and need those services, particularly with crime increasing, with a governor that's letting people out of the prisons and emptying the jails. I don't see that we could reduce our police department any more than we already have. We are down to the nubs. We've cut all the fat. We're down to the lean. So based upon that, I would vote for the full amount of the increase of 1% and no sunset clause.
Okay. And I would also agree with my four colleagues. We want people to be able to live and work here. I, like Roberta, thought when I got into council, like we can just grow the pie. And while we've done that, what's also happened is more unfunded mandates from the state that cost us more to do. So it's just we're constantly trying to catch up. And I mean, before I was on council, I would have been the first one to say, tighten the belt and do all of these things. And you get on and you go, oh my gosh, can it get any tighter? And then Rochelle gets it tighter, and we are as tight as we can be. So it's a very thoughtful decision that all of us as residents will need to make. When it comes to the Citizen Advisory Committee, I think based on the comments and what we've all said is really advisory, I think is another unelected body that's unaccountable to the electorate. We're the ones that are elected and need to take that responsibility. We have a lot of advisory aspects from the public. Public comes to city council meetings every 2 years when we have an election. We have strategic planning and we have public input at that time. And so I think there's ample opportunity, and we want to make sure that we really maximize that to the extent that we can. But advisory committee, I would say, would not be wise. And likewise with the Citizen Oversight Committee, I would like to see, so I remember in the 3 cycles that I chaired the Finance Committee, inviting people to come to the meetings, and you'd get a few people here and there, but not a lot. And possibly something that we could do is to highlight one of those meetings being, hey, this is on a general fund that includes the sales tax measure and things like that. So we're really pointing it out that people understand this is it. It's capital improvement projects and other than wastewater treatment plant, and people may want to see that, but what people think of when they think of where is government spending my money, they're thinking of the general fund. And so maybe we highlighted that in some way, but I think there are ways that we can do that through the Finance Committee and at council meetings that can ensure ultimate transparency without the oversight aspect that then ends up just being more of a bureaucratic mess and, quite frankly, a hassle for the members when they're having to go through, when they're just thinking they're going to volunteer for a little something, and then they have to go through all these required trainings and filling out Form 700s to, display their financial interests, and it's a big ask. So that would be my take on those two, and I will go back the other way now from my left to my right, and I will start with Councilmember Fonzie.
Thank you. I think oversight is important. I do not support the Citizens Advisory Committee, and I understand the rationale for not wanting to have the hassle of a Citizen Oversight Committee, but yet I feel that the oversight's important. That I read many websites every day, Steve Frank and California Taxpayers Association and others, and they're all saying, oh, all of these city taxes that'll be on the ballot this coming November are to pay down PERS. And that's what they talk about, and they truly believe it. And that's certainly not what we will be doing as a city. We will be putting our money where our mouth is and putting it into our employees, especially in public safety. And if we could make this a special tax rather than a general one, I'd probably be happier, because then it would specifically be pointed towards public safety, or I would hope so. But they're just impossible to have them pass. That they've set the bar so high, you have to have 2/3 plus 1, and that's almost impossible for any electorate to pass. So I understand the need for the general tax, but I like the idea of the Citizens Oversight Committee, because I think it gives the assurance to the voters, particularly when they're voting on the measure to put it in place or not, that this will be handled correctly, and that we can look back on our F-14 and say, we asked you for money to improve our roads, And we did it. And we have proof. Our Citizens Oversight Committee has shown that we've been good stewards of our money. So in spite of the hassle, I think that it would help this to pass. I think it's the right thing to do. And I would prefer to have a Citizens Oversight Committee and not a Citizens Advisory Committee.
Roberta, I would ask, do you see another way to do that without, because it's less about, I mean, yes, there's extra staff time involved. I think we're less, that's not my overall concern. Like, it's more that it's hard to get people even on the F-14 oversight committee. That's a challenge. Can you see another way that we can offer that oversight and that transparency without sort of the bureaucracy of having the oversight committee that requires so much from the individuals themselves?
I think having the talk on the block, and instead of talking about our finances and where we're at and how we're behind, we need to be asking the citizens, what do you see is where we need to go with our money? That we have this much and we can't do everything. Please join our finance committee. Please come to our city council meetings. Send us a letter. Let us know. But I think it's tougher to get this passed and on the ballot without it. There are ways to get around it, and I know it's not necessarily something staff wants at all. It's a terrible pain to have to get everybody doing their ethics training and their Form 700s if they received money or were lobbied and all kinds of things. But I do believe, and especially with COVID leaning over our shoulder, the Citizens Oversight Committee is important to get this passed.
Okay. And it's not just the pain for staff, it's the pain for the people themselves that want to be on the committee. I think when they find out they have to do all of that, the tendency is like, no, thank you. But okay, so let's, I'm going to keep going from my left to my right. Councilmember Newsom.
I would agree with my fellow Councilmember Fonzie. I think it's important to have the citizens of our community have a place to come and oversee what we're doing, to be a part of it. Being a part of council and being a part of advisory committees is a challenge. All of us know it's an investment. I don't think that we're getting the involvement that we should on finance committees. People are kind of overlooking that. And I think it's important to be, again, good stewards, being financially responsible for money that we're asking. I think it's important for our citizens to want to step up and be a part of it. We're allowing them to vote on this item. I think that if there's some way that we can do, I prefer an oversight over advisory. If there's a way that we could create oversight, a committee, something that is giving back. Maybe we do a finance meeting that only highlights directly on this topic of where it was spent, how it was spent on a regular basis. In lieu of an oversight, I would be for that. But I think that we need citizens' input. I think that we need to have more transparency than just saying transparency.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Borbo.
Yeah, well, I have to kind of respectfully disagree with my prior two colleagues on that. Mayor, you addressed some of these reasons, but you know, on the F-14, where it was a general sales tax, so we could have, you know, spent it on anything, but we said, you know, the intention, shouldn't say we, I was not on the council at the time, the intention is to spend it on roads. In that case, you had, and you still have, you have a list. You say, you know, this is how much money we got, which you could do in this case, and this is what we spent it on. Boom, we spent it on, you know, this road, that road, and we send out the annual report in the mail to folks. Yes, we have a oversight committee that's hard to staff, hard to get a number of people for it. They meet once a year for a couple of hours, and they spend many times that filling out paperwork. But at least in that case, you had a definitive thing. You could say, how much money did we get? How much money did we spend on roads? And so there was a degree of meaningful oversight, although I think that is accomplished in the little brochure we send out every year. In this case, you're going to get a certain amount of money that can be tracked, but you're going to add maybe you add a couple of police officers. Maybe you make a more competitive salary in police, where that's the most difficult thing for us to get staffing in. But you don't have a definitive thing. I don't know what an oversight committee would do, because you're not going to be able to say we did X with this money. We're going to use it to run the city better. We're the accountable people as the elected officials. If folks don't like what we're doing with the money, then they should vote for other people every 2 years. They have numerous opportunities to come. When you were chair of the finance committee, I went to 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4 hearings, and I was the only member of the public there at the time. We do have opportunities. Folks have frequent opportunities. So my concern about empower or creating one of these committees, when we don't have a sunset clause, it'll be with us forever. We'll have difficulty staffing it. And it sounds good. It sounds nice. Maybe it feels nice, but I just don't think it would be effective or really accomplish much. But I would offer this: if we want to try that, don't put it in the ordinance. Let's just create one. We could create an oversight body outside of this ordinance and try it for a few years, and then come to see whether that's adds any value to the process or not. But if you put it into this ordinance, we'll forever be trying to staff this body that's difficult to staff. And any member of the public can always come and ask questions about what the heck we're doing with their money. And I would encourage them to do so. And so I kind of disagree that it's would be an effective value-added tool. I think it would just take up staff time, be difficult to handle, and I don't think it would provide a meaningful level of oversight. But like I said, we could try that outside of this ordinance. We could create separately some sort of a oversight body for a period of 4 years or something and see how it goes.
Thank you. And so, and I would assume on advisory, that would be a no?
Correct. I don't see real value in either one of those bodies.
Okay. And Councilmember Funk.
And supports the spirit of what Councilwoman Fonzie and Councilwoman Newsom are saying about the genuine importance of people knowing that they can hold their government accountable to spend their money well and to do what we say we're going to do with those funds. I'm totally on board with that objective. I'm not sure that the Citizen Oversight Committee is necessarily the way to get there. I think that Council Mayor Pro Tem Barbeau has pointed out the essential that we're essentially creating another layer of bureaucracy, and that's kind of a backwards message. We say we really need this money to deliver services, but we're going to spend some of this money not serving you, so we can just have this extra layer of bureaucratic. So let me suggest an alternative way that we might go about doing that and see what the other members of the thing. I've been thinking about this in terms of that the council really should offer an accountability plan to the public, where we ought to, we're serious about accomplishing some things for our government. Let's set some metrics out there that are not too difficult to count and maintain, that we can consider and report on, that say whether we're getting somewhere with this tax. And are we achieving something for our city in terms of funding its government better and functioning better, that our citizens can count? And that, so along those lines, so with police, for instance, we've talked about the difficulty we don't want to end up with a police department that can only attract people who've never been a policeman before or are rejects from other departments because there were problems for some reason. Well, that's really sketchy. So we want to look at our ability to attract and retain police officers. Turnover. And a turnover is a metric that can be counted without too much difficulty. Maybe there's some kind of metric we can look at in terms of proactive policing, because right now our police can only react to a lot of things. And there may or may not be useful metrics in terms of speed of service response. Fire's a little more complicated because the main thing we want to do is to have events not happen. We want wildfires not to get going and not to be able to destroy the city. But there may be some other metrics that we can look at in fire in terms of meeting objectives, but also about the age of their property, of their plant and equipment. So if we're doing this partly because all of this equipment that we're using is old, and that would apply also to the general, to Nick's areas, if we're looking at all of our older equipment, what's the age of the equipment, so that as we actually replace a bulldozer or a fire truck over time, that then you'll see that change. Pavement condition index we already measure. That's a good measure of how we are doing in terms of upkeep on the roads. Are we making any progress? So I think if staff thinks about this, that they might be able to come back to a plan of this kind, that we can do a fairly simple dashboard, maybe not more than a dozen metrics, and maybe not that many, that are key things that we're tracking for whether this money is being well spent, and make that a commitment to do that, to have discussion around that in workshop sessions or something where we can have something more fruitful than just general public comment. Talk on the blocks or outreach or workshop sessions with council. Do something, give people a plan that says we're going to take our responsibilities seriously, and we're going to give you a better, easier way to give us actual useful feedback on whether we're doing our job right. That's a little less of a blunt instrument than every 2 years having the opportunity to elect new members of the council. Which, of course, the election is where we're ultimately accountable to voters. And they have the choice of whether this money should be enacted, and they have the choice of whether we're the people that they want to have overseeing that money. Thoughts?
Thank you. I would ask the city manager, based on what you've heard from us, what types of, well, first of all, this evening, do we have to, if we're not going to go with a formal oversight committee, do we have to come up with the specific transparency accountability measures tonight? Or is that something that you can be working on over the next couple of months, and we can have discussions about whether we bring it back to the meeting? Or do you have a good sense, like what are some of your thoughts on putting something together? We've talked about finance committee, we have strategic planning, we have our talk on the block that can be certainly repurposed, like, hey, look, here's what's happening, and getting input, but letting folks know how it's being, and not just the tax measure. Like, I would love people to know the entire general fund, like as Mayor Pro Tem Bourbeau said, to just like section out this piece of money. And it's sort of like the CFD. Okay, it goes for 1.5 police officers, or it's awkward. It's like somebody saying to me, oh, you got a check for $200. Where did you spend it? It's like, well, it went into my checking account and it paid for my mortgage and my insurance, and along with everything else. So to piece things out like that in the general fund is a little bit awkward unless you have something like F14. So how could we provide that transparency and accountability in a way that is actually meaningful? What do you see as being possible?
Anything's possible, right? Just not everything's possible. If you're looking for my advice, I think that trying to go through the specifics of the accountability, unless you want the oversight committee to be specifically in the ordinance or the advisory, it sounds like it was not advisory. If you wanted some sort of oversight or accountability specifically in the ordinance, I would suggest hashing it out. But I think it would be more transparent and you would get better feedback and you would have more flexibility for future councils as things change and morph. If you did something like Mayor Pro Tem Bourbeau or Councilmember Funk or even you, Mayor Moreno, and we have a meeting where we specifically, sounds like all of you agree, we want to be very transparent about where it's spent. We want to be very accountable about where it's spent. We want to get public participation in the process. And it feels like having a council meeting or a agenda item that is specifically dedicated to developing that, what that looks like in that mechanism would be a good thing. If it does not have to be in the ordinance, you are not committed to the July 14th date. We have some time to do that. When we did measure F14, sometime after the, like a month or so after the council voted to put it on the agenda, they did have basically their own accountability on where they all agreed. They had discussions on where it would be spent and where it wouldn't be spent. That is where we get some of our pledges of not to supplant, our pledges to spend it on more local roads and not necessarily major arterials. There was a big issue with people were worried that the money would go to Walmart and the interchange improvements. That council pledged at that meeting not to do that. So this council could do something very similar and actually formally adopt, whether it be an oversight committee or metrics or finance committee or whatever, as long as all of you felt comfortable that yes, we all agree there's going to be some oversight. We could do that at a later date.
And Rochelle, I'm flipping through the True North report. I don't recall that being either in there or if it was not a significant factor.
It was not a significant factor for those that were polled. And he said that is typical statewide, that it's not necessarily a large tipping point for the electorate on whether they want to vote for something or not. So I don't think it's critical that it be in the ordinance. It doesn't change anything.
Okay. So I would ask Council members Newsom and Fonzie, can both of you see a way in which we don't have a formal oversight committee in the ordinance, but that we pledge and move forward with taking a variety of measures to provide that oversight and that accountability and that transparency?
Go ahead, Heather.
I'm fine if we take an additional step amongst us to be transparent, to be open, to have that conversation of how does our citizens want us to spend that money. I'm fine with not having an ordinance.
I too, I'm okay without having it in the ordinance. I like the idea of the oversight. I think it's valuable. And if we could somehow build this in, like we have a CDBG meeting and we have many members of the public come and say, I want money for this, I want money for that. If we had a meeting where this was covered annually and say, this is our needs, where do we want to put it, and let the public know about it and publicize it well and get it out there, I think it may serve the same purpose.
Okay. So I think what we have decided, what I see we have consensus on is the 1% no sunset clause, no formal advisory or oversight committee. We've talked a lot about the different transparency and accountability measures, and we'll come up with those as we go. And I see that there's, I think, some really exciting opportunities for that public input and that engagement. Typically, when we have strategic planning, if you look at other cities, they have boards with dots, and where do you want to spend all the money? Like with us, it's like, do you not want a police officer? we don't have the dots to put next to the money. And so I think this is a time when we're able to start really investing in our community and keeping that quality of life that we all want, and even provide more input. So I think we are agreed on that, and I will ask for a motion.
I will move that we move the recommendation from staff that we ask staff to bring back to us at the July 14th meeting an ordinance for council consideration to place a 1 cent order on the tax override measure on the November 2020 ballot that will not include any additional language with regard to a formal oversight committee or advisory body, but that at that time that the staff also come back to us with additional recommendations on process by which we can formally engage the public and develop for the council a plan of accountability.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
So some council members are trying to second with their hand. We have to have the mouth. We have a motion by Council Member Funk and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Bourbeau. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Funk?
Yes.
Councilmember Fonzie?
Yes.
Councilmember Newsom?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Bourbeau?
Yes.
Mayor Moreno?
Yes, ma'am.
5-0, motion passes. Thank
you. We are now on to just a discussion item that we have. We put on just with COVID-19, we want to be able to discuss city issues that are going on and provide some oral updates and give the public a chance to weigh in with any questions or concerns that they have. And so I will turn that over to our city manager for her comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Give me one moment here. I'm doing double duty here as clerk and there we go. Okay. I wanted to talk about some of the exciting changes that have taken place just today, as a matter of fact. So we will have some places of worship, hair salons, and barbershops can reopen here in SLO County. So these changes are only effective upon approval by the County Department of Public Health. The County Department of Public Health has approved them. So the new regulations encourage organizations to continue online services. This is for places of worship. And online services and activities, including protecting individuals who are most at risk for more severe COVID-19 and older adults and people with specific medical conditions. Places of worship can begin in-person worship, religious services, and funerals with a maximum of 25% capacity or 100 attendees, whichever is lower. And a religious children's school instruction is still prohibited under the state order. But that is good news that some of those in-person services can resume. The new guidelines for hair salons and barbershops are also out. those services, it does limit some of the services to those that can be provided with both the worker and the customer wearing face coverings for the entirety of the service. Services such as waxing and facials that cannot be performed with face coverings on both the worker and the customers are still suspended. And those types of services are anything that can be done with the mask on are allowed to resume. So that is exciting. Also wanted to give an update from the last conversation that we had. We had conversations regarding seeing how we could help our restaurants and shops with the reopening, and discuss the potential of closing streets and looking at some of those things. Our city staff has been extremely busy calling all of the restaurants mainly. So they have called the 53 restaurants that we have on file a minimum of twice, and some many more over the last couple of weeks. We've been calling them to talk about how can we help you reopen. What types of things do you need? Are you interested in expanding your dining area out into more outdoor areas, whether it be sidewalks, parking lots, streets? We're here to help. As you can imagine, we've got a lot of mixed responses on that. Some are, hey, maybe that might be interesting. Some are, hey, I think we're going to kind of see how this limited reopening goes first, and we might get back to you. And some are remaining, hey, we're going to stick with dine, delivery, and takeout for a little bit, depending on what their capacity is and what their staffing and ability to do that. They are all aware that we are here to help, and that we are willing to be very creative in making things work. If you have more questions on that, Phil is here available tonight, and he can tell you a little bit about some of those outreach calls. We've also reached out to them to make sure that they know what the county guidelines are, where to find them, how to do their self-certification, how to do their plans, and let them know that we are here to help them comply and keep the community safe. So those have been going, those phone calls and outreach have been going very well. We also had a discussion last council meeting about some of the restrooms that are available to our public, and particularly our homeless. I am pleased to say that the city worked with ECHO, and ECHO was able to place a portable toilet that is available to anyone that would like to use that. It is there at the corner of their parking lot. They do have a camera there, and people there overnight that can help monitor that. We're going to take a wait and see how well it is used, if we have any problems with it, and all of that. But we thank ECHO for being a partner and providing that portable toilet for both the homeless and anyone in the public that would like to use it. In the meantime, all of our other restrooms do remain open for the hours that we can have them open. City Hall Monday through Friday, 8:30 till 5. Some nights it's longer than that. And parks, Lake Park, upper restrooms open till 8. Paloma Park, we believe we have open till 8. Colony Park Community Center still has to do manual locks, but we're working on that one too. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
And if I could just add to it regarding some of the things we talked about last time with the homeless population, I do want to remind anybody, whether unsheltered or any other individual who wants to get tested, those tests are being provided free in Paso Robles right now. You do need to make an appointment. Best to make it online. You can go to readyslow.org to do that. If you do not have computer access, you can call the toll-free number, which is 888-634-1123. Currently, RTA all their transit services they're not charging for, so that would be considered essential travel, and so you could ride for free up to Paso to get tested if that is something that is needed by any individual. And then beginning June 1st, the county is going to start going around to different cities throughout the county, and they'll spread it around geographically. And in June, on the 10th and the 11th, they will have testing set up at Echo. And folks will need to ideally make an appointment ahead of time, go online and do that, and we can provide the site to do that at. So just wanted to give that update too. So go ahead, questions. I think we had Fonzie and Newsom both raised their hands.
I'll go ahead, I guess.
Councilmember Fonzie, go ahead.
Thank you. I was happy to see that the churches are now going to be allowed to open and that they can have up to 25% capacity. Is that correct, Rochelle, and 100 or less? I can't hear you.
You're muted.
Thank you. Boy, by the time this is over, I'll have it down. But in the meantime, yes. So it's either 25% of the building occupancy capacity or 100 people, whichever number is less. I know that several of our churches have been creative and are considering outdoor services and or have been holding outdoor services. So that would, the limit would then be 100. You do have to obviously have social distancing and other protections in place that are in the guidelines.
Thank you. And just a sideline, does that apply to city council meetings? Can we go back to having regular ones where we can see the public out in the audience if we have 25% or less capacity or 100 or less?
It does not specifically say that yet. However, we'll be talking with the county about that. We do have some challenges in that we all saw there weren't a lot of seats in the council chamber when we started to social distance anyway, and we do have to have staff social distance too. So it may be a little bit of a challenge still, but I think it's coming.
Could I make the suggestion when it does open up that we consider maybe going to the pavilion? It would be easier to spread it out and we could actually have a public meeting. I know that there are those who are not familiar with computers or don't own them or have other issues that are not speaking out at our meetings. I miss them. I'd like to have them here and get full input and involvement of the public if we could.
We could definitely look at the pavilion and see if we could fit more people in there. And we could also look at potentially outside or some other method.
Thank you.
Colony Park might even fit more folks than pavilion.
I like that
Councilmember
idea.
Newsom.
I like that idea because you also don't have to worry about people coming up and down an elevator. You have easy handicap access, so pavilion, Colony Center, but I would like it. I agree with Councilmember Fonzie that you just definitely lose some participation because of this method. So having, getting back to seeing people in public spread apart is where I'd like to see us try to go.
And Councilmember Newsom, I think I saw your hand up a little bit ago.
Yeah, I have some questions on regards to the reopening of salons. You talked about both the customer and the owner or provider of services must wear a mask. What about those in the community that are not able to wear masks due to medical conditions? Are they still able to reap the services if they don't have a mask on?
So the guidelines say that both the customer and the person giving the service have to wear masks. It does not provide any specific exceptions that I am aware of for those that cannot. If somebody has that question, I highly recommend they go to readyslow.org and look at the new reopening guidelines, go through there. They could also call the county and find out what their options are.
On another note, and I'm not sure you have the answers to it, but I had to do essential business travel. And I was told that all of the public health department had closed all the public bathrooms. Therefore, our highways and our local roads are being used as restrooms. Have the public bathrooms been open to gas stations, rest stations, restaurants, those sorts of facilities?
I can tell you that the city restrooms are open. It is up to each individual gas station and restaurant and the orders in their specific county also, right? Some of the essential travel crosses state borders. They have different rules in different states. They do have a little bit different rules in some of the counties. And so I really don't have a good answer for you on all of the gas station restrooms and the restaurant restrooms. Other than to say it's probably a mixed bag. Yeah.
Well, some of them locally have closed all of their public restrooms. So some of people who are returning to the public and going to support businesses, whether it be restaurants, takeouts, they have closed public restrooms to the public. So that's becoming a barrier not only for myself in that travel, but for those of us that are going out to the community are unable to use an outside restroom outside of your home. So I guess it's kind of a plan accordingly. If you can't wait till you return home, you might be limited in that capacity. And it's really unfortunate that the CDC has done some of that, not knowing the consequences, and it may also impact business owners as well.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Funk.
I know.
Oh, Rochelle, I'm sorry, continue, Rochelle. I didn't realize you had.
No, that is okay, and I'm getting texts here from the police chief who is traveling across country as we speak, saying, you know, that's what it is. It's a mixed bag, but he's never not been able to find a restroom though. So.
Okay, Councilmember Funk.
Yeah, a couple things. First, I wanted to second what Congresswoman Fonzie suggested, that the sooner we can get our own meetings as a council back out into visibility with the public in a more open setting, the better. I think that she's right. That there are people who have felt this was a less accessible form or less accountable in some way, less public, because they are able to see us only through media and participate only by phone. And I think that we owe it to people to be absolutely as accessible as the guidelines will allow for people to participate safely. And then I have a question for staff. As you're looking at the various restaurants in town in particular, is alcohol and beverage control continuing to be supportive of businesses serving alcohol in outdoor dining, if that outdoor dining is occurring, say, in their annexed part of their parking lot or the sidewalk or another location?
So let me just briefly talk about accessibility and the council meetings and moving them to another location. We will definitely look into those options. We'll definitely try and work with the county to find out what's reasonable. I do want to say that there may be some trade-offs. Not every one of our facilities may not be ready to broadcast live to Channel 20. There's certain equipment that we have here that would not be available at some of those other locations. And so staff will look at all of those. We will try and get as creative as we can. But what we don't want to do is, okay, we've now allowed these people to look, but now you can't watch it online, or some of those too. So we want to make sure that it's accessible for as many people as possible, and we'll do that. On the ABC, if Phil could answer that one, that would be helpful because he's been following that very closely. Phil, are you there?
The situation is changing rapidly, actually, with alcohol beverage control, and there's a little bit more flexibility right now, especially for these temporary uses. And they are allowing an express permit right now. It's $100 that allows people to expand their dining areas. They do have to serve food. They have to have a full meal available with any beverage, but it does allow them to expand off their site. It allows them to be sharing a potential space with another business as long as they can delineate each business. And there's a lot of different options. So a couple of businesses are looking into these options now, and we're working with them on expanding their dining spaces. So it's been very positive. Very good news.
Susan, we can't hear you.
Are we offering the option of having the blocking off, not necessarily the whole street, but say on a street like Entrada, blocking off the parking on one side with some kind of temporary barrier or planter or something so that it protects the diners from cars, but where you could allow traffic, a lane of traffic to continue to go through the street for pickup and drop off at other businesses, but allow expanded outdoor dining. We're offering that option as well as closing a whole street for those businesses that don't have parking lots they could use that way.
Certainly there's plenty of options available. We haven't had the demand or the density of restaurants to require looking at potentially closing off substantial public space. So right now we're just trying to feel it out where the restaurants are and what the situation should be. Right now there just isn't that demand. Right now people are looking at smaller private spaces, maybe using some sidewalk space and some things like that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions before we go to public comment? All right. Seeing none, we will go ahead and open up to public comment on this discussion item, COVID-19. Are there any callers wishing to speak on this item?
Yes, we have two callers. First caller is Tricia Stanley.
Hello, this is Tricia
Hello.
Stanley. Hi.
Hello.
And
Please
thank
go.
you.
Go ahead.
Yes. Oh, okay. Thank you. Wanted to say thank you very much for having public comment on this, and just wanted to say concerning something that I said a few times ago. Already I knew that the governor put out, when the governor put out his order, that it trumps local orders. But my point a couple meetings ago was we don't want any stringent, draconian local orders as we had with COVID-19 unless there is a true emergency. And to me, that means parameters like we have hundreds of people dying in our county of a disease like this. But tonight I wanted to talk about hope. There was so much in the news concerning we don't have a vaccine. We don't have a vaccine. And I think that put undue fear in people's minds that doesn't need to be there, because vaccines aren't the only thing that can help people with viruses. There are actually what I call the 2 C's and the 2 S's. I took a evening, I guess you'd say a lecture that was here in San Luis Obispo County about 30 years ago. A lady who knew about different herbs and that, and she had a list of 10 different items to have in your house to help you with your health. And one of them was aloe vera for burns, but she also mentioned 2 things, chamomile and cinnamon. They both of them are antibacterial, antifungal, and antiviral. So chamomile, which is a flower. People know it for tea to help with sleeping, but it is also antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral. I don't choose to take it myself for that because it's related to ragweed. And if you have hay fever, sinus problems, that wouldn't be the way to go. But cinnamon is another thing. And I take that myself. It helps regulate blood sugar, and it just helps with, keeping the bad guys away. So if I feel like a cold is coming on or anything like that. But normally, my routine is
Thank
3
you.
times a week. I have that in the morning with Ovaltine.
Thank you, Miss Stanley. Your 3 minutes are up. I do want to thank you for your input.
Oh, okay. Well, find out about colloidal silver.
Colloidal
Thank you very
silver,
much.
you got it.
Bye bye. Yes,
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. And do we have another speaker? I think you said, Luke.
Yes, our next caller is Brenda Mack.
Hi,
evening.
are you there? Oh, hi.
Yes, we are.
Again, I'm going to still request that we have a wash station and a porta potty near Sunken Gardens. And I have been using the one at Echo. One of the things, it's been pretty clean with the exception of no toilet paper for the last couple of days. But I was really surprised there's a minimum amount of graffiti. But one of the problems that I didn't realize is crossing the street. I have been nearly hit twice just to go to the bathroom. So again, I'm requesting that, and since we're going to have more people out, because on Sundays there's big groups of people out now, just to be able to wash your hand and use the bathroom. And then I think some of the homeless people, because we don't have homes, so we got to go, would probably use the one that's closer to Sunken Gardens. That's just my personal opinion. And the other thing about recently, I heard someone in another county is going to talk to public health in Sacramento and ask what their opinion is on these bathrooms being closed, because there seems to be some sort of confusion of what the CDC says versus what California says, because it appears to be that each state can set its own standards, and if the state doesn't know people are closing these bathrooms, particularly to us out here that are vulnerable, we have nowhere to go but the bushes. And me, myself, no, I'm just not an animal. I'm just not going to be in the bushes if I can help it. But again, I am requesting again for everyone, even people on the weekend, a toilet and a wash station during the pandemic, which public health today stated we were still in the pandemic, whether people believe it or not. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other callers wishing to speak on this item?
We have no additional callers.
Thank you. And are there any comments that were received by email to be read into the record?
No emails to be read into the record on this item.
Thank you. I will go ahead and close public comment. And yes, I think we're all doing things we can to keep our immune system up during times like this especially. And with regards to the comments from Brenda Mack, I'll ask our city manager to address. We kind of talked last time about the challenges with having that downtown, and how glad we are now to have that at Echo. We have, I know the crosswalk can be challenging, but just a little ways down there is the light that you can use, and the crosswalk at the actual traffic light. So there are ways to get across safely. But the city manager, if you've got something to add.
You actually said most everything that I was going to mention. We have talked with various departments, both Public Works and the Police Department, and feel that a portable toilet in the downtown here would come with a lot of challenges. Echo has the ability to monitor that restroom and see the types of activities that are going on. We do have, the light there over on the other side. It is a little bit challenging right now with La Plaza though too, so I can understand that. And we do and are trying to keep the restrooms here at City Hall open whenever we have staff here in the building. So we continue to try and look for opportunities for that and to provide restrooms as best we can. Hopefully with more businesses opening up, although it is hit and miss right now, we will see some of the restrooms that were previously open start to reopen also. Some of those private restrooms.
Thank you. All right. Well, good update on COVID. We'll go through any necessary council announcements and committee reports. I'll go from my right to my left, starting with Councilmember Funk.
The Homeless Services Oversight Council will be meeting this Friday, May 29th at 1 p.m. By phone. The decision item is a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors of the county with regard to about $2.3 million in funds related to services for the homeless and homelessness prevention related predominantly to the COVID, or all of them related to expenses for COVID. There are recommendations for funding of requests that involve both ECHO and Transitional Food and Shelter that are providing services in the Atascadero.
Thank you. Because I'm right in the middle of my left now, coming from left to right or right to left. The RTA unfortunately there was a challenge to the bid process, and then the lowest bidder, then the other one challenged, and so it ends up legally the cleanest way is to completely rebid the project, and so that is happening, and we tentatively have another special meeting set for June 15th to hopefully move forward with that. But that's it for now. Mayor Pro Tem Borbo.
Yes, since our last meeting, the IWMA held a meeting, and because I think I mentioned last time there had been a inability by some members of the public to participate because they didn't receive their usual email that a meeting was taking place. The board did rehear the issue of suspending the styrofoam ordinance, which would have gone into effect in April. And the board voted, I think it was 8-4, to go ahead and suspend the styrofoam ordinance implementation for a year. Then we discovered there were some technical problems, a misprint on the agenda for people calling in. And so we didn't do any business after that. And at this point, it looks like that's going to stand unless somebody objects, because there was a lot of participation. There were like 20 people commenting on that issue. And so there was a couple other things the board will then address in its next meeting in June.
Thank you. Councilmember Newsom. You were muted.
Just when your square doesn't light up green. I have a California Joint Powers Insurance Authority board meeting tomorrow via teleconference at 5:30. That's the only thing I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fonzie.
Thank you. Yes, I went to a LAFCO meeting, Local Agency Formation Commission, and they have hired a new person to replace David Church, the executive director. It is Michael Prater, who was the analyst for LAFCO. A good man. I think it'll work out great. I have Air Pollution Control District meeting tomorrow, and I'll keep you posted on that at the next meeting.
Thank you. Now we go on to individual determinations or actions. I have been asked by TFS if I would support their request of funds, and I would like to do that and like to be able to send a letter on, you know, kind of on behalf of council. I think that goes with the things that we're trying to do, but because of it's not time sensitive, I didn't have to do it without bringing it to you. I thought I would bring that during this time and see if I can just kind of get head nods or thumbs up, or is my council okay with that?
Yes.
You put it in front of you. Okay, I can't see. Are we all good? 5? Okay, all right, thank you. Any other individual determinations?
Good night.
None? All right, meeting adjourned. Good night, all.
Good night.